I think there's a renewed interest from the people of this area.
The Patriotic Alliance leader, Gayton McKenzie, says industry in KwaZulu-Natal must be part of efforts to improve people's lives. He was speaking while on a campaign trail in Wentworth, south of Durban, where residents complained about unemployment, drugs, pollution and poor housing.
This area is surrounded by industry. You have the refinery, you have factories, but there's a 95% unemployment figure here. It cannot be right. These corporates need to be engaged and say they need to reinvest some of the money to create jobs. Once you create jobs, you also fight crime, because crime is not just a policing issue, it is a socio-economic issue also.
The ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has praised the late struggle stalwart Dr. Mutsuku Peko for his activism. He died on Friday at the age of 93. Ramaphosa said while on a campaign trail in KwaZulu-Natal that Peko used the power of the pen to fight the apartheid regime.
We are deeply saddened by his passing. He played a very important role in the development of our country, in the struggle. He's one of those leaders, even though he was working from a different organization, who really dedicated himself in what he articulated about our struggle and wrote about our struggle. The many books that he wrote are a real sort of testament to the capability and the stature of the man that has passed away. So we dip our flag in honor of him.
And finally, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that his country intends to step up its attacks on the Palestinian militant group Hamas. He says the Israeli military is determined to secure the release of hostages in Gaza. Netanyahu made the comments during the Jewish holiday of Passover, despite international opposition. Israel's War Cabinet Ministry, Benny Gantz, has echoed Netanyahu's comments.
In recent weeks, the entire system, including me, have continued to search for ways which would allow us to return our hostages. I've personally talked to world and regional leaders. We're building more pressure, political, military and economic. Hamas should know that they have no immunity anywhere. Not in tunnels, not in luxury hotels.
Recapping the top story, the Higher Education Department says it's considering taking legal action against the Trinity International Bible University. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's soccer action as relegation threatened Richards Bay. They secured a crucial victory over Kaizer Chiefs. Plus, we have Manchester United. They survived a scare, clinching a win on penalties against Coventry, and they head on to the FA Cup final. Full details coming up just before 6:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning from the traffic desk. We have some protesting reported on the Hornsneck Road in Pretoria. This is near the Vibro site. So if you're going in and out of Karankua, an early update that there may be some traffic-related, protest-related troubles on that section of the busy Hornsneck Road. Also reports of burning tyres in Durban on the M7. That's between Titran and Bel-Air Wakesley. So leaving the bluff, there might be a little bit of traffic disruption there this morning as well. Cape Town's Baden-Powell Drive that was closed overnight because of protesting at Khayelitsha. That section of roadway has been reopened. Baden-Powell along the coast is moving between the N2 highway and Musenberg. And just a couple of big lights out. The Macassar Road R102 junction of Furgrove's not working. That'll be busy. And then right in the sort of heart of Kales River, you've got the Stellenbosch Arterial and Van Riebeek Road. That junction out of order. There'll probably be some delays on all approaches to that busy one this morning. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
6 minutes after 6. Good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Monday morning. How are you going this morning? I hope that, you had a good sort of restful weekend. Mine was a little too social in some regards, but thoroughly enjoyable, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, all sorts of things sort of going on over the weekend. It seems to me sometimes that Mondays, you think that there isn't much news, and suddenly there's a ton of it, and I think that the news agenda is going to just speed up and get into another gear because of the elections. That's my sort of sense, and I think there might be stuff happening in the electoral court. There might be stuff here, there, and sort of everywhere. But I think that the elections more and more will move into the focus. And a comment yesterday by the ANC that former President Thabo Mbeki, former President Kgalema Motlanthe, former Deputy President David Mabuza, and former Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka will join the ANC's big election campaign. And there's been a lot of talk about the election campaign. Where's the sort of, what's the right word, the energy, the vibe, the gees, the whatever of it? Where is it, you know? I think people have sort of been asking questions about that. And so President Ramaphosa talking about that, saying these people will come onto the campaign and help the ANC win votes. He spoke also, this had passed me by last week, but the way that the people look at which is the biggest economy in Africa, and again, we as South Africa are the biggest economy in Africa. Nigeria's currency's been devalued. That's one of the reasons why. And so they've been doing different things there, and as a result, the value of their economy has shrunk slightly, and ours has sort of grown. And there has been growth, we must just say that, or very, very small growth. And then, of course, the other story, and you heard Elvis speaking to the ANC about it just a moment ago. He was speaking to the ANC spokesperson about this. The Sunday Times publishing details of this recording of an ANC NEC meeting in which it seems President Ramaphosa said that members of the ANC National Executive Committee are simply not doing enough, simply aren't working enough, aren't coming to meetings. He says people arrive late, people don't come to meetings, things like that. I mean, that sounds quite serious to me. I would be frustrated. You go to a meeting of any company and the boss doesn't arrive, or the most important person, that would be frustrating. I thought that was interesting. Also said, I don't think it was the president, I think it was other people talking about how sort of government adverts will be used to sort of flood the airwaves, was the phrase, I think, to sort of explain government successes, and the DA saying that they're not going to stand for that, they'll go to the public protector, and the ANC sort of denying that there's coordination here. It's very interesting to see how it all plays out. Panyaza Lesufi, the Gauteng Premier, he's with the ANC. Of course, he was also campaigning yesterday. He was at an Anglican church in Kagiso talking about the ANC's links to religious groups. Julius Malema, he was on the campaign trail as well. He's been doing a series of interviews with podcasts and other people. He held a briefing on Friday. He spoke to journalists. He said that he was open to coalitions with other parties, including with the DA. I don't know how John Steenhuisen feels about that. He also said that after the election that, you know, his head would sort of be on a plate if the EFF didn't do better. He said that's why, you know, he's sort of running around like a beheaded chicken, I think was the sort of phrase, or something like that, like a headless chicken, that's the phrase, and said basically that, you know, his head as a leader of the EFF will be on the platter. I think he also said, if I understood the reports correctly, that he has to do a deal with the ANC, otherwise he's in sort of serious trouble. There might be some, I need to sort of check the reporting on that myself properly and just make sure I've understood it. But certainly an important election for the EFF one way or another. I think there's no other way to see it. I think that is certainly the case. There's this very interesting declaration that came out from a group of Afrikaans organizations, or they say that they represent 2 million Afrikaner people. And they say it was a sort of joint Afrikaans declaration. They say they don't represent everyone who speaks Afrikaans, but they represent, through organizations, 2 million people. And they say they see themselves as a sort of indigenous cultural group that is linked to Africa, connected to Africa, a stronger phrase, connected to Africa. And they want a cultural accord with government. And I'm kind of a little curious as to what actually they want. They want cultural freedom. And I mean, if you have to look around the country, and we'll put this to their leader, Dr. Theuns Eloff, he's played an important role in our country, by the way, maybe a little under the radar at times, but it was a very famous moment in 1987. He led a group of sort of Afrikaans academics and intellectuals to a meeting with the ANC, which was banned at the time. It was very controversial in sort of white society, if I could call it that, in the apartheid state. But you know, he's played a very important role in different ways. So we'll talk to him. I have a couple of questions around, you know, whose rights are more protected? A child who, you know, comes from a Chitsonga family living in Joburg who can't get mother tongue education, or an Afrikaans child who can? You know, these are interesting conversations that I think we need to have. And then also, in their joint declaration, they talk about the Constitution recognizing the pursuit of territory. I'm fascinated by that. What is that? I mean, I don't know. We'll let them speak for themselves and find out. I wonder if the people behind the Trinity International Bible University knew what was going to happen when they did this. They gave an honorary doctorate to the actor, Selo Makakwanglube, over the weekend. He was very proud. He had it on X. And the Trinity International Bible University, as I understand it, does this. They give sort of honorary doctorates. But unfortunately for them, it would appear, they are not a recognized institution of higher education. You have to be actually formally recognized by the department. And I mean, we have all of these people and all of these groups that go around giving each other sort of honorary doctorates, and I don't know if it just devalues the whole thing, and I think that's a sadness. I think that's unfortunate. I think that's really a problem. I don't think we should be doing things like that. But that is, one of the issues, is that, people call themselves doctor, and I think sometimes we're allowed to sort of check, are they really? And a doctor of what? Anyway, now the department says they might take further action. And I think, this whole issue of honorary doctorates is something that we do need to look at. Again, we once had a big conversation about it, but I think we need to do that again. Western Cape Police have confirmed that they're now going to court to appeal parts of a court case with Intercape. So Intercape is the bus company, runs primarily between the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape. And they run in other places too, I think. And they've been under attack in the Eastern Cape. And look, all of the evidence points to people in the taxi industry. Some of them have been named, and some of them have demanded money. I mean, publicly demanded money from Intercape. And what's happened now is that there was a court order saying that the police must properly investigate this. And the police minister, Becky Clele, is appealing it. The Western Cape Police are appealing it. I find it amazing that you'd appeal against being told to do your job. It's a very strange story, because somewhere there's a lawyer with a good reason. But honestly, it's a very strange thing. Really not, just the kind of thing that shouldn't happen. And then if I may, just for a moment, Dr. Motseko Peko passing away over the weekend. Dr. Peko had been the president of the PAC. He had worked in the struggle for freedom for a very long time. He was 93 when he passed, and I remember speaking to him right when we started the show on SAFM Sunrise. It was a debate around land. I remember that. I might have spoken to him in years before that, but that was the one thing that'll stand out. And I'll tell you what stands out for me is it is always good and valuable to speak to someone who has strong underpinnings for what they believe in and presents their arguments honestly and with dignity and logically, and doesn't turn into a fight. It's just, this is my view. This is why I believe it. Now let me try and convince you. And that was my memory of him. So I think a dignified man, a principled man, and people will be remembering Dr. Motseko Peko, who passed away over the weekend. You know how to get in touch with us? 086 000 2032. What for you? I mean, should there be a cultural accord with Afrikaans people, or with Afrikaans, or with Afrikaner groups? Honorary doctorates is such a big story at the moment. The ANC and the campaign trail as well. 086 000 2032, SMS 41391. You tweet us FM Radio, and that's Stephen Grootes, and you send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. Good morning, it's 6:15.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And Musa, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Yourself?
Good. Yes, all right. Going to be a busy day?
Definitely. All eyes in KwaZulu-Natal, where the KwaZulu-Natal division of the High Court in Durban is expected to hand down judgment in the ANC's trademark case. We know that the ANC is challenging the usage of the name Mkhonto weSizwe and symbols by former President Jacob Zuma's endorsed MK party, accusing it of being in violation of the Trademarks Act. This is by using the name and logo that is similar to that of the disbanded Mkhonto weSizwe military wing. And we also aware that...
Sorry to interrupt you, and it's such an interesting case, this, because it takes us into interesting places about our history, and as far as I can see, we still don't have the reasons for the other electoral court ruling about Zuma's candidacy himself.
Yes, we're still waiting on that one.
Yeah,
and we know that, also we will be able to see, or will hopefully know, how things will play out later on today.
Yeah.
The Senzo case continues this morning in the High Court in Pretoria. On Friday, we heard the defense in the trial maintain that accused number 1, Muzi Sibiya, was arrested and questioned for Mehiwa's killing in 2019. In Limpopo, there's 2 prominent murder trials related to a political killing and the VBS Mutual Bank resuming in 2 separate courts. And in the Northwest, following the non-absorption of about more than 200 nurses who completed their community service since June last year, in the province, those unemployed nurses will be staging a sit-in at the Provincial Health Department offices demanding their immediate employment, and they are saying that clinics and hospitals throughout the Northwest are buckling under pressure due to a shortage of nursing staff. At the weekend, Eskom saying load shedding will remain suspended until further notice.
It's day 26, eh? Day 26.
Yes, it is. And this is due to sustained generation capacity and adequate emergency reserves. Now, there has been some questions on whether it is a political ploy, and that was answered by the ANC President, Cyril Ramaphosa, who was on a campaign trail, saying that it is not. However, the DA, John Steenhuisen, saying that it would be a scandal of this election if Eskom would announce the return of load shedding after the final vote.
So doesn't the electricity minister have a briefing? He's going to take questions about this today.
Later today, yes, he will be. And just lastly, we will also look at the complaint the DA threatened to file against the ANC for using state funds to win votes, saying that they will provide new and damning evidence confirming that the ANC intends to use taxpayers' money to help win the elections.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, this was in a way one of the debates of the election that was always going to come up, this claim and the counterclaim as well. And Musa, thank you. We'll be listening on the radio 18 minutes after 6.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Let's have a look at your weather around the country. Tshwane this morning, fine, 14 and 32. Johannesburg, fine, 11 and 30. Vereeniging, fine, 9 and 30. Mbombela, fine, 16 and 31. Polokwane, fine, 13 and 32. Mahakeng, fine, 15 and 32. Vryburg, fine, 15 and 31. Mangaung, fine, 13 and 30. Kimberley, fine, 16 and 31. Uppington, fine, 18 and 33. Cape Town, partly cloudy, fog patches in the morning. A light to moderate northerly wind, 11 and 20. George, partly cloudy, fog patches in the morning, a light to moderate westerly, 13 and 30. Gqeberha, partly cloudy, scattered showers, thunder showers, fine by the afternoon, a fresh to strong southwesterly, 18 and 22. East London, partly cloudy, scattered showers, thunder showers, a moderate to fresh westerly wind, 19 and 24. eThekwini, partly cloudy, isolated showers, thunder showers in the evening, a fresh to moderate to fresh northerly wind, 19 and 27. Richards Bay, partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh northerly wind, 21 and 32. And Pietermaritzburg, partly cloudy, 18 and 30.
For 120 years, Rhodes University has shaped history. From Sir George Corey's pioneering 62 conversations capturing the early history of the Eastern Cape, to the first email to be sent in South Africa, and now leading the way in nanotechnology. Rhodes University is more than an educational institution. We are a legacy in motion. Be part of the evolving legacy. Rhodes University, where leaders learn.
Mama Kite, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megalitres of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand Water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they've encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand Water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand Water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Rand Water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand Water beacons so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
And we'll be now playing Kena on Mondays at 4:30. The day has changed, but the time slot hasn't. So if you're interested in news that's happening with us kids and our peers around the world, don't forget to tune in. See you there.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
22 after 6, good morning. Over the weekend, the world's biggest democracy started voting, as 969 million people are eligible to cast a ballot in India's national elections. They take place over a period of around 6 weeks, but almost everyone is predicting that the governing party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, will win by a landslide, and that the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, will serve a third term in office. Tambisa Fakuda is a Senior Research Fellow and Director at Africa-Asia Dialogues. Tambisa, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Firstly, the BJP is obviously going to win. It's so dominant at the moment. The main opposition group, the Congress Party, is so weak. Why are they so weak?
Well, it's so weak, firstly, because Narendra Modi has been doing a lot of work, particularly on his Hindu nationalism, which has kind of encouraged politics. Whether that's negative or positive, it's history to judge. But suddenly you've got a very politicized India. But besides that, there has been some economic changes and successes, particularly for a certain elite in major cities and provinces of India, and that has led to the popularity of Prime Minister Modi.
Is it also because the Congress movement just hasn't got its act together? I mean, they just don't seem to have a really coherent message to Indian voters.
Indeed, and I think they've taken some sort of back seat in terms of Indian politics. But again, it's because of the vibrancy and the active position that the BJP has taken over the years. I mean, they are a movement outside the government that continually mobilizes the Indians in various provinces of India. And as a result, you actually tend to find all of these other opposition parties emerging whenever there's elections. But what we've seen with Narendra Modi doing is opening places of worship that have been closed for a very long time, basically revitalizing Hinduism, but not only in India. He's created and established relationships even outside India with other Hindu leaders, particularly in Britain and in the United States. So he's seen to be a very active president, not only in terms of being a politician, but also representing the global emergence of Hinduism.
What does that do? I mean, it makes obviously religion one of the big issues in this election. What does that do for minority groups, and particularly people of the Islamic faith, who I think it's 190 million people of that faith in India? It might be more.
Well, that's what I think the opposition has been using in terms of campaigning, basically going to minorities, that the rise of Hinduism, it threatens the minority rights and it pushes back democracy that has been established by India over the years. So that's their rhetoric, and that's what they are basically repeating to their constituencies. But correctly so, we've seen what has been happening in India since the rise of Prime Minister Modi, with violence, particularly against Muslim minorities in various parts of India. And that has created a lot of concern. But also even is just rhetoric. Is becoming a much more religious fundamentalist, even establishing relations as far as Israel with the right-wing formations in that part of the world. Even in the United States, for example, Rishi Sunak is one of his favorite persons in the world at the moment. So he is seen as this person who seeks to revive this Hinduism, but also formalizing relations with right-wing extremist formations around the world with an intention of reviving Hinduism. And that is really raised concern in terms of pushing back of democratic achievements in India.
Of course, economically, India seems to be very much growing, seems to be very much on the up at the moment. And Modi will talk about that as well. A third term for Modi, would he continue with economic reforms? Would the Indian economy probably continue to grow? That has consequences for its neighbour, China?
Well, it looks like it. I think what the one thing that he's done is going to diaspora in various parts, resuscitating those relationships and ensuring that successful Indian diaspora comes back to invest in India. And I think that has enabled him not only airtime in international media space, where Indians are now seeing their prime minister represented in many parts of the world, particularly United States. So with that, I think he's likely to continue with the trajectory that he's taken, particularly that of economic revival in India, but importantly opening opportunities for Indian diaspora to reinvest in India, and also signing some bilaterals with these powerful countries, particularly United States, UK, and Israel.
Thembisa Faguda, thank you. Senior Research Fellow and Director at Africa-Asia Dialogues. 27 minutes after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
Do we need to have a moment of silence for Kaizer Chiefs after yesterday?
Yeah, well, no fine, hey? That's how it feels. Kaizer Chiefs, that braai running out of coal. Yeah, yesterday. Not a good day for Chiefs fans as well. It is the team that is continuing their downward spiral. They succumbed to a 1-0 defeat against lowly Richards Bay United. Now, in a match where Chiefs dominated possession and had numerous chances, it was just not their day, as the Natal Rich Boys, they moved away from the relegation zone with that win, leaving Chiefs reeling in 10th place after their third consecutive loss. Now, in contrast, there was high drama in Polokwane City, where City and Cape Town City battled to a 2-2 draw, leaving Cape Town City losing precious ground at the top of the table, and Polokwane sitting just a notch below in 11th place. Soccer action elsewhere. Manchester United, they blew a 3-0 lead and needed a last gasp winner from Championship side Coventry to be overturned as they scraped into the FA Cup final with a 4-2 penalty shootout victory, where they will once again meet Manchester City. Here's Manchester United's Bruno Fernandes.
Obviously, when they scored the goal, we thought it could be my offside, but as we saw in the image, Asa was a little bit behind, and us from the front couldn't see that. It was really tight. I think we put ourselves in a difficult position in that moment because we had the game controlled. We could even kill the game after, but we didn't, and obviously credit for them for what they've done. But I think we have to do much better.
Another match saw Liverpool brushing off their European disappointment to move up to second in the Premier League, level on points with table-topping Arsenal after a 3-1 win against Fulham at Craven Cottage. Now, Aston Villa came from behind to beat Bournemouth 3-1 at Villa Park, strengthening their grip on a Champions League spot. Tennis action, Sloane Stephens capturing her first title in more than 2 years as she outscrapped Magda Linette in the final to win the Rowan Clay Court tournament 6-1, 2-6, 6-2. And another match, the world number 6, Casper Ruud defeating Stefano Tsitsipas 7-5, 6-3 to win the Barcelona Open yesterday. The Norwegian, he earned revenge after his defeat by the Greek world number 7, and that was at the Monte Carlo Masters final last week to claim the biggest trophy of his career. And finally, athletics, the Olympic champion Perez Jepchirchir stormed into victory in a women's only world record time of 2 hours, 16 minutes and 16 seconds at the London Marathon. The world record holder, Tikset Esefa Magetu Elemu, also of Ethiopia, and Kenya's Jocelyn Jepkoske also beat the previous women's only record set by Mary Katani in 2017. Now, Kenya's Alexander Mutiso Muyao, he held off distance running great Kenenisa Bekele to win the men's race. Now, the British duo of Emil Carrez and Mohammed finished third and fourth. We'll have more sport on Sunrise. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. You were there, SAFM. In the next half an hour, we'll talk about Spaza shops and registrations. Would it be possible to really force them to pay tax? That to come. It's just gone 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the High Court in Durban will today deliver judgment in the ANC's trademark case. The ANC had hauled the Umkhonto weSizwe party to court, accusing it of violating the Trademarks Act by using the name and logo similar to that of the governing party's disbanded Umkhonto weSizwe military wing. The Higher Education Department says it's considering taking legal action against the Trinity International Bible University. Minister Bladen Zimande says it's it's a bogus institution awarding honorary doctorates to South African celebrities. And the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has described the late struggle stalwart Dr. Mutsuku Peko as a man who had dedicated his life to the liberation of South Africa. He died on Friday at the age of 93. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, heavy traffic in Pretoria this morning. The traffic lights on Esky and Patlali at WFN Como are down, and that traffic backs almost to Thunderhof already. It's Monday morning. There's bigger volumes anyway. There just looks like more traffic volume this Monday than there was last week. So all of that plus the faulty traffic lights, it's a really heavy one on Esky and Patlali into city centre of Pretoria. Also very heavy is the run through Dustport Tunnel, Bremer through the tunnel onto Transaranya. Big backlogs there as well. If you use the N3, that's heavy from Bedford due through Edenvale. There's a crash before Linksfield Road and the breakdown before Modderfontein Road. So traffic coming through from Van Buren via Galulis into Edenvale already backed up. And roadworks leaving Soweto on the M1 North up by Maresburg. That right lane closed. You're still with us. Durban, the M4 inbound. There's a program of overnight roadworks at Congella, which can sometimes run into this morning's peak hours. It looks okay on the M4, so maybe they've got some additional lanes open, but we'll continue to monitor that one. Cape Town today, busy out of the Mitchell's Plain area. AZ Berman up to the R300, slow. R300 down towards the lights of the M7 Jake Scoville Drive, very slow. And it looks like there might be some traffic light issues on Dolphin Beach Hotel Junction. So Marine Drive coming off the West Coast Road, big queues onto, West Coast Road passing Bayside onto Marine Drive down to Dolphin Beach, a lot heavier than normal. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
With Intao Ling Lichel. Intao Ling, good morning. Happy Monday.
Morning, Stephen. I hope you're good.
How are the markets looking this morning?
Well, markets closed the week off on a mixed note. This was unexpected, especially as those escalating Middle East tensions took a turn on Friday. In Wall Street, markets closed mixed, with the Nasdaq falling for a sixth straight session on Friday, its longest losing streak in more than a year. This was spurred by Nvidia's shares tanking and comes ahead of the big tech earnings, which will be released this week. So it'll be interesting to see how those numbers then influence moves, especially in the Nasdaq. Now, taking a look at the JSE, it managed to end the day slightly in the green, with the all share up 0.13%. But when looking at its weekly performance, it was down 2%. Over in Asia, we are seeing markets staging a rebound this morning as stocks sort of shrug off those concerns, those Middle East concerns, shifting focus to economic data from China, Japan, and South Korea. In currency moves, the rand kicking off the week on a stronger footing as tensions subside, trading at 19.10 to the dollar.
And then Bitcoin had a halving event. What's a halving event?
That's exactly where I want to start. What is a halving event? So this takes place every 4 years, and what happens is the supply of the number of new coins entering the market is slashed by 50%, hence the term halving. Now, this takes place to stop the inflationary impact that would be caused by releasing the total supply too quickly. Now, the total supply of coins or number of coins that are expected to be released into the market is 21 million by the year 2140. With the recent halving event, only 450 coins will now be created each day. The latest halving event took place on Friday, and we saw the price of Bitcoin hold steady, which is unusual because the price of the coin usually skyrockets after the halving event. So investors will be keeping their eyes glued to their screen, waiting for that rally to kick off. I mean, the last time I checked, the price of Bitcoin was trading close to $66,000, which is up only 1.3%.
And then chocolate prices are skyrocketing. I mean, Stats SA told us chocolate bar inflation's up 15%.
Yes, this one is really for the chocolate lovers, and if any of the chocolate lovers have wondered why chocolate prices have risen so much, I noticed this around Easter time when I was buying Easter eggs, and it was really, really expensive. Now, as I was doing my reading, it all made sense because by March this year, prices had more than doubled in just a 12-month span. And this has been caused by dynamics playing out in the cocoa market, which is the main ingredient that is used for the sweet treat. So we've been seeing a rise in cocoa prices for a few years, but things got bad from around last year as terrible weather conditions and diseases hit crop in West Africa. And that's the region that's known for producing the world's or most of the world's cocoa. And this has resulted in less supply of cocoa in the market, which has then influenced those price movements. Those prices, the cocoa prices, hit another record high on Friday, as there's still not much of a solution for the issues affecting supply or production rather within West Africa.
Ntaoleng Lechela, thank you very much indeed. Back, of course, in an hour. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Ras Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Steve, over fresh morning and Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
All right. Let's first start with Egypt and our International Relations Minister, Naledi Pandor. She's been talking to the Egyptian Foreign Affairs Minister in Tshwane.
Stephen, that is quite true. Over this past weekend, Minister Pandor hosted the Foreign Affairs Minister of Egypt, Samir Hassan Shukra, to engage on what they call diplomatic, political, economic and social ties between the two nations. They also look at the issues of mutual interest, including the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement implementation and also the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding on Legal Cooperation between South Africa and Egypt. They also touch on the Middle East, Stephen, because the issue of the Middle East also affects Egypt. Hence, they had to engage on this issue that they were saying that there is a need not to see escalation of hostilities, but what is needed is peace, security, and stability in the Middle East.
And then Ethiopia and Sudan, they had a big meeting in Sudan on the situation there over the weekend.
Stephen, the 1209th meeting of the AU Peace and Security Council held in Addis Ababa looked at its resolution on the situation in Sudan. They've committed, Stephen, to that the AU respect the sovereignty, territorial integrity, national unity, and the independence of the Republic of Sudan, but also pledging their solidarity with the people of Sudan that there is a need to have a legitimate aspiration for the restoration of constitutional order through a civilian-led government, not through a military-led government, Stephen, because that's what the AU has been concerned since the conflict erupted in 2023. They also look at the Article 7 of its protocol on peace and security council. They strongly condemns already the current conflict that is going on, Stephen, that it undermines the international human rights law. And they also demand that the warring parties have to immediately stop the fighting and prioritize the interest of Sudan and its people.
And the United States withdrawing its soldiers from Niger.
Remember last month we spoke about Niger pulling out immediately from the military cooperation, Stephen. This was coming that now you need to go on the ground now to say, how do you pull out the 1,000 troops of the U.S. who have been in Niger, Niamey since July 2023? Now they've agreed, both the Deputy Secretary of the State of the U.S., Kat Campbell, as well as the Prime Minister of Niamey, Aline Mahaman Lamine Zine, when they met over this weekend, Stephen, that there is going to be what they call orderly and responsible withdrawal of the American troops from Niger. We know, Stephen, the Sahel countries that have been active on this issue, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, they are moving towards Kremlin now, they're moving towards Russia, moving out of France as well as the US in terms of their military cooperation and agreements.
And then in Togo, they seem to have agreed on a new constitution with presidential term limits.
Stephen, this is a crisis in Lome, as we spoke about it last week extensively, but now the parliament on Friday adopting that move where now they will have to elect the president directly, no longer through the public. And the opposition lamenting, Stephen, that this is a constitutional coup and they're still going to be having protests. Remember that Togo is going for the elections next week in terms of legislative elections, and 2025 is going to be presidential elections. So they fear that Gansibe Ayedema, it seems he wants to retain power until 2033 if he is re-elected in 2025. So the opposition in Togo, Stephen, they're not happy with what is currently happening in terms of this parliamentary reform, legislative reform, and at the same time centering power to the presidency.
And then we must remember the passing today of the former PAC president, Dr. Matsoko Pheko.
That is quite true, Stephen, that we learned over this weekend the passing of Dr. Motsogo Pheko, who was an advocate admitted both in Zambia and South Africa, Stephen, a person who also represented the PAC at the UN General Assembly on the question of apartheid, an author at his own right, Stephen, authored more than 35 books, 5,000 articles on international law, on many aspects, Stephen, that affect South Africa. The land question being one of their own, that Motsogo Pheko, passing at the age of 93, was remembered. So even the office of the president of Cyril Ramaphosa also issuing a message of support, and even the message to the family of Ntate Motsogo Pheko and the PAC community.
Rest Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you very much indeed. Back, of course, tomorrow more news from our continent through the day here on SAFM. 19 minutes to 7.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, lots to talk about this morning. There's the election campaigns, of course. Various parties doing different things. All of those claims around the ANC election campaign, and that the president's not very happy with how it's going so far, but frustrated, it seems, that other people are not working on it. The Afrikaner group, the joint declaration, people talking about that. Also, of course, issues around institutions that offer or say they're awarding honorary doctorates. I mean, how seriously do we take them? You know the number 086 000 2032. Malasela on the line from Brits. Malasela, hi. You want to talk about marriage certificates?
Good morning, SG. How are you?
Yeah, well, go for it.
SG, we have a problem here. We're not sure if we can get any assistance from somewhere. My uncle, who was working as a policeman, after he died some 10 years ago, some colleagues, together with the girlfriend, submitted a fraudulent marriage certificate and to GPF. And GPF made the payment to those people, even though this guy nominated his own mother to be the beneficiary of his funds. So we've been trying to follow up this thing, and then we went to the lawyers, and the lawyers, they said to us there is a legitimate marriage certificate. When we went to Home Affairs last year, Home Affairs, they said to us, this person was never married. And what has happened was a mistake. You need to report it. But the problem is, we are afraid because we know that in Bramley, where he was working, there's one guy who is also a homeboy of this guy who is involved in this issue. So we are afraid that even when we try to report this thing secretly to the presidential hotspot, what they call it?
The hotline, yeah.
And we also reported it to Home Affairs and to GPF. No one of them has ever responded to us since from last year in June. We are still waiting even today. We don't know what to do because his house has also been taken and given to girlfriends.
Malasela, when Home Affairs say that this marriage was not properly recorded, right? Have you gone to the pension people who made the payout to say, look, this is proof you've done the wrong thing?
We did. We reported back to them using the email that guys know that this what has happened is wrong, and we also reported to
and they did nothing.
The master's office. The master's office in Johannesburg, we reported to them that what you have paid to a wrong person, the person who did not qualify. Please investigate this. But unfortunately, no one is coming back to us.
Yeah. Malasela, that sounds like that's such an interesting thing. And I'm sure things like this have happened before. Anyone come across a situation like that before? Can someone help Malasela, please, on 086 000 2032 about, how to deal with this and how you deal with something like this? It's just gone 6:45.
Real savings, real benefits. Here's what real clients say about OUTsurance.
My name is Alan. I'm 71 years of age and I live in Douglasdale. I'm paying 554 Rand a month for my 2022 Nissan Magnite.
Want a car insurance premium that'll blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote. It's quick, it's easy, and it could save you hundreds of rands every month. Here's Amy.
To anyone who has not reached out to OUTsurance, what are you doing? Reach out today.
Blow your mind, not your paycheck. SMS out to 30754 and see for yourself why OUTsurance was voted Best Car Insurer 2023 by the Star and Pretoria newsreaders. Here's Yusuf.
It just shows that OUTsurance is top of the tops when it comes to insurers.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
I'm Sindisiwe Chikunga, the Minister of Transport in South Africa. Our nation is not where it was 30 years ago. From a modest 7,200 kilometers of national roads in 1998, we have expanded to an impressive 24,160 kilometers today. The end-to-world coast, a testament to massive road infrastructure investment, creating thousands of jobs, reducing travel times, and connecting communities. We are collaborating with other spheres of government to enhance safety and quality of our roads. We have manufactured over 240 new trains right here in Mzansi using local skills and materials. Welcome Stimela Sabantu, offering an affordable transport alternatives.
Keeping up with your TV license balance inquiries is now simpler than ever. No more waiting in queues, no more phone calls. Just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 and secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
13 minutes to 7. There was a comment last week by the Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, that he wants all Spaza shops to be registered and to pay tax to SARS. At the moment, I'm presuming that most Spaza shops are not formally registered. Tebogo Kaas is the Chief Entrepreneur at the Institute of Chartered Entrepreneurs. Tebogo, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
Would registering Spaza shops, forcing them to be registered or compelling them, would that be a big change to the way that they operate?
That should be the way things ought to have been done in the first place. In fact, that's how things have been done way back, but seemingly things have slipped, and we've got a situation where anybody who's keen on doing so can open a Spaza shop at the drop of a hat, thus imperiling society with all the attendant risk of serving consumables to society without the proper certificates or accreditations.
So I can understand, I think there is a strong case to say government should have these institutions registered. But once a business is registered for any reason, it doesn't mean that government's going to inspect them or check on them or necessarily change anything. All it usually means is that you have a little piece of paper somewhere.
That is absolutely correct, Stephen. The problem is, we look to government to provide all the solutions, when in actual fact, this should be an all-of-society type of approach, where members of society get to be sensitized as to the ills of conducting business or allowing business or keeping a blind eye when illegal activities happen under their eyes. Let me give you an example. You find instances where a homeowner will be quite happy to let out a space, whether it's a garage or a piece of real estate in their yard, for somebody to come and open up a shop. First of all, they would not want to know if this person has been legitimately in the country, if they are a foreigner, or do they have the kind of licenses that will allow them to serve the kind of food or goods and services on that premises. All I'm just concerned about, are you going to pay me my rent on time? And oftentimes the rent is actually exceedingly high. So we need society to actually come and buy in and make sure that you understand that your actions in a small way contribute to the greater Malay in society, and not just lament when things go pear-shaped. Because we also go and support those businesses without questioning as to, you're selling me salt cheap, a packet of salt cheap. Who are the manufacturers? Are they registered manufacturers, or are they dodgy? Because it's only when things go pear-shaped again that society rises. But even that is just fleeting, because the problem will just abate. The outcry will abate over in no time, and then it's just business as usual. So society itself, there needs to be now a sustained awareness campaign for ethical citizenship to ensure that it's a society-driven type of approach, because it cannot be that government will have police or inspectors at every corner, as you'd know that there's informal stores opened almost every other corner, especially in the townships.
The idea of taxing them, I can't imagine government would get much money from tax from Spaza shops. I don't think they're making much of a profit. I think it must be quite tough, actually, to be the person running a Spaza shop. You've got long hours, security is always a concern. In some cases, people have to sleep in the shops because otherwise they get, robbed at night. I mean, you wouldn't get much money from taxing a Spaza shop, would you?
No, certainly not. In fact, the taxing would probably be nominal taxing, but in any event, we would actually not encourage taxing. In any event, the laws don't currently, so if you look at SARS, there's a threshold. I can't remember what the threshold is, where after a certain, if your threshold falls below a certain annual turnover, you're not supposed to actually be, you're not going to be charged any taxes, income taxes. But I think the taxes that the minister might have been referring to are the taxes that relate to managing the payments, and it will be nominal taxes, just like in the past you'd have revenue stamps, for making sure that certain compliances have been met. And I think that's what it is, not so much punitive to make them difficult. Already small businesses trade in a very difficult environment when they have to compete with the big businesses with all the retail masses that they command.
Tebogo Khas, thank you, Chief Entrepreneur at the Institute of Chartered Entrepreneurs. 8 minutes now to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Major mess around the Galulis interchange in Joburg. There's a crash on the N12 and R24 routes after they've merged before the interchange. Both routes coming in from the Ekurhuleni side are heavily backed up. And then big problems on the N3 getting through Galulis. A crash scene before Linksfield. And then a stationary truck blocking 2 lanes further up before Modderfontein Roads. The N3 queuing through the interchange starts right back at Germiston, Alberton territory around Elands interchange all the way through deep into Edenvale before you're out of that. New week, but no change on the roadworks. M1 North at Maresburg coming out of Soweto. That's jam-packed. Just a heads up, if you're driving out of Pretoria through to Joburg on Route 1, it's very busy this morning. Traffic already jamming from the Brockfontein interchange in Centurion all the way down to about sort of Leroux Avenue Bridge before Allendale Road. That's an unusual traffic pattern. Heavy traffic coming into Pretoria on Eskia and Pathleli. No lights at WF and Como. The Dustboard Tunnel's bad. And Roger Dyson out of Pretoria West Side queuing down towards the R101. There's no traffic lights at that junction again this morning. Durban, the exit from Pinetown, that's quite busy on the M13, going down to the roadworks at Paradise Valley. In Nanda Road, coming through from Newlands, a very busy Monday, queues down towards the N2 highway. That can usually be a traffic light related when you see a problem like that. And Cape Town, backlogs out of table for you this morning. Marine Drive, very heavy. There may be some traffic light issues at Dolphin Beach to work through, but that traffic heavy from Sunningdale side all the way through to Sunset Beach, and a crash on the Kuberg Road just past Clattercliff Road, delaying traffic out past the refinery. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
At SAFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
7 minutes to 7, Zweli Banzi on the line from KZN around electricity. Zweli Banzi, hi.
Stephen, morning, sir. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I always prefer SAFM because you really take care of people. And if other institutions can learn from SAFM to keep their words. Listen, Stephen, it's 3 months now without electricity here. I don't have electricity.
Where are you, Zweli Banzi?
I'm in KZN, that is Mkhanyakude district. I have reported the matter to Eskom up until now. They gave me some references number and everything. They promised to come back to me. They promised that somebody would be sent to me. Up until now, okay. First of all, they sent somebody who didn't know anything. He came into my homestead. He's from school, and I wasn't around. The old lady was at home. And then when he came, he didn't do anything, but he reported the matter as fixed. But while the matter is still outstanding, I'm telling you, Stephen, it was the 28th of January when I was having electricity here. And now you can imagine, ek is wrangtig moeg, ek weet nie wat moet ek doen nou.
And Zweli Banzi, I have to ask, I mean, you paid up, eh? There's no debt or anything like that.
Exactly, it's a prepaid. The only problem that is what I ask for Eskom people to fix for me is the recharging box. When I recharge my token, it says padlock. It's only the thing that I'm looking for from them to change the box and give me a new one.
Okay. All right, Zwelabanzi, thank you. On the line from Kwanikhude in KwaZulu-Natal. So it's the padlock box. I've got one of those prepaid things myself, but I've never seen the padlock image, but I think I know what you mean. All right. If anyone can help Zwelabanzi there, Eskom, look, would be nice if you could just get in touch. We did take his number, 5 minutes to 7.
Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
Well, it's emerged around the country at the moment. The Department of Water Affairs and Sanitation has 67 legal actions underway against councils who aren't properly managing their water and, in some cases, allowing sewage to flow into water systems. Remember, 2 weeks ago, the High Court ruling that the Governor Mbeki municipality in Mpumalanga was criminally liable for pumping sewage into a river, fined the council 200 million rand. We see so many cases where municipalities are battling to manage water. Gundu Maswime is a lecturer in civil engineering at the University of Cape Town. Gundu, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to our listeners as well.
We know that councils are battling to manage their money. When you look at the situation around the country, there appear to be water systems that don't work. Do the people who actually run the water systems understand their systems? We've had residents saying they had to show people where infrastructure is, things like that. Is there a problem with actually understanding the systems we have?
Yes, there is a massive problem, which some of it is associated with the transfer of assets during the 1999 period when municipalities were redetermined, when the boundaries were redetermined. So you will find there are some systems that would fall under 2 different municipalities, and the records were taken to only one. And in other instances, the records were never taken over by anybody at all. And then later, new people were employed as municipal employees, but the people who were working on the water were coming from Department of Water Affairs. And around 2014, some municipalities, like in the Bembe district, they took all the guys that used to work at Water Affairs to become part of the municipality. So some knew where the water lines were, some did not know. So there are different cases across the country. It's interesting, Kanyakude also had a big issue with the Human Rights Commission this time last year. So I would have liked to know whether your caller only struggled with electricity or if there was the water has been restored. Yeah.
Is it possible to go back and find the details of all of this infrastructure? And I mean, that's probably quite difficult. And in some cases, and I know you've pointed to this, you have people who've been allowed to build big houses or big structures on top of water pipes. I mean, that's a huge problem.
Yes, it is possible. There's a lot of technology. In fact, one of my master's students last year who just graduated, final year student, honors, was actually looking at this technology for a municipality in Bembe district, in the Mutare area. So there's a ground penetration radar. There's all sorts of ways of doing this. And some municipalities are so small that water infrastructure, if you really are serious about it, within a month you could have reconstituted the whole system electronically, and you have your digital twin. You can model even where you are having losses and so on and so forth. So it is actually possible to do that. And there's been some initiatives, but they have not really gone to the ground. I had that this money set up to fund such projects, but I have not heard anyone that said they have started.
At the moment, often the politicians are sort of boss of the officials, and that's kind of how it has to be in a way. But do the officials need to have a little bit more power? Maybe people who are going to be employed by a council for the next 20 years, do they maybe need to have a little bit more power in making decisions that will manage that municipality for the next 50 years?
Yes, that would have gone a long way. In fact, in many instances, politicians could preside over planning future development and new capital projects. It's very difficult to see where the politician comes in when it comes to matters of maintenance, because they are supposed to be very systematic. The engineer is supposed to have his own infrastructure master plan, and from that master plan, should be able to determine what is going to be done in which year systematically. So, starting from the worst case, there has to be a technical prioritization exercise to determine where the work will start, how much is going to be needed, and so on. But then you find that in almost all cases, the politicians are the ones that determine what needs to be done, even when it comes to maintenance. And in that case, it becomes so haphazard that the engineer's opinion does not really count at all, and the situation actually gets worse.
Kunda Maswima, thank you. Senior lecturer in the Department of Civil Engineering in UCT. In a few moments, you'll speak to the head of the people behind this Afrikaner Joint Declaration. You with SFM leading the conversation, 7 o'clock.
In our top stories, High Court to rule on ANC MK party trademark case, and Education Department threatens legal action against Trinity International Bible University. Good morning. We start with election news. The High Court in Durban will today deliver judgment in the ANC's trademark case. The ANC had hauled the Umkhonto weSizwe party to court, accusing it of violating the Trademarks Act by using the name and logo similar to that of the governing party's disbanded Umkhonto weSizwe military wing. Zoleka Kodashe reports.
The ANC had anchored its arguments on the common law principle of passing off, that is, a misrepresentation of an association. The party believes the use of the name by the new party would lead to voter confusion at the May polls. However, the jurisdiction of the court is imperative because without it, the court cannot consider the merits of the arguments before it. Advocate Dalimpofu Senior Counsel, who represented the MK party in the matter, argued that the Electoral Court was the correct forum to ventilate the matter as the ANC had already invoked Section 16, subsection 2 of the Electoral Commission Act.
The Sizwe Umar National Party leader Rashid Kutar says giving unemployed people skills is their priority. He launched the party's 2024 election manifesto in Signal Hill Village, Nemaikeng in the northwest yesterday. The Sun Party will contest elections for the first time. Kutar explains how they plan to empower the unemployed.
We need to ensure that we process it into the finished product so that it can be exported. I was traveling to China and I was importing furniture from there. Later on, I came to realize that we can produce it here because they are taking the raw materials there. We have the skills in this country, but because the factories are closing, we are losing the skills. So we need to act fast so that the elder people who know the skills can transfer to the younger people.
The ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has described the late struggle stalwart Dr. Mutsuku Peko as a man who had dedicated his life to the liberation of South Africa. He died on Friday at the age of 93. Ramaphosa was on a campaign trail in KwaZulu-Natal, where tributes have also been pouring in for the former Pan-Africanist Congress president.
He played a very important role in the development of our country, in the struggle. He's one of those leaders, even though he was working from a different organization, who really dedicated himself. And what he articulated about our struggle and wrote about our struggle, the many books that he wrote are a real sort of testament to the capability and the stature of the man that has passed away.
The Higher Education Department says it's considering taking legal action against the Trinity International Bible University. Minister Bladen Nzimande says it's a bogus institution awarding honorary doctorates to South African celebrities. He says the university is not authorized to offer any qualifications because it's not a registered private higher education institution. Nzimande's spokesperson is Veli Mbele.
We have written to Trinity International University before and have warned them about continuing to operate illegally and for them to regularize their operations. We also asked the Council on Higher Education for guidance on how honorary qualification should be offered and by who. The department is considering more comprehensive and decisive action against Trinity International Bible University and all other individuals or institutions who continue to undermine the department's regulations.
Further afield, and finally, days of heavy rain have swollen several major rivers in southern China, which are now threatening to flood, forcing the evacuation of tens of thousands of people. The BBC's Laura Bicker reports.
Local officials are closely monitoring river levels, which are dangerously high, according to Chinese state media. Localised storms, coupled with days of heavy rain, have turned quiet rivers into fast-flowing torrents. This area is prone to flooding, but state media claims water levels are at a once-in-a-half-century state of alert. More than 60,000 people have been evacuated as the heavy downpours continue. Rescue teams have already arrived in the affected areas as the government tries to protect 127 million people who live in Guangdong province.
Recapping the top story, the High Court in Durban will today deliver judgment in the ANC's trademark case. The ANC had hauled the Umkhonto weSizwe party to court, accusing it of violating the Trademarks Act. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, it's soccer. Kaizer Chiefs facing another tough season after another stunning defeat, this time to lowly Richards Bay FC. While in rugby, we celebrate the Lions, who secured a full 5 points victory against Leinster at Ellis Park. Full stories just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Certainly coming into Pretoria this morning from the northern parts. There's no traffic lights on Eskia Patlali at WFN Common. That's a really big delay. You pick up the back of that queue around the Mobile Highway. Paul Kruger straight through the middle is busy through Capital Park into CBD. And no traffic lights on the alternative third route, Steve Biko down at Soutpansberg. So that's a busy route as well. And that doesn't even include the southbound run on Dustport Tunnel. So you've got four major routes in the Pretoria side this morning from the north, and they're all heavily backed up. Talking of things that are heavily backed up, Galulis is a mess. You've got a crash and a breakdown on the N3, blocking lanes between Linksfield Road and Mollefontein Road. So it's a heavy queue out of Jermis and Alberton. You've also got a crash coming into Galulis on the N12 and R24 route. So both of those routes stay heavy in from the Ekurhuleni side. Durban, the M4, the Southern Freeway, queuing now at Jacobs. So if you come off the N2 and pick up the Southern Freeway to Durban, there's quite a backlog to work through there. In Under Road out of Newlands, very heavy queues down towards the N2 highway. And Cape Town coming out of Tableview is a bit of a problem. There are crashes on your two major routes. So collision on Kuberg Road just after Plattercliff Road. That's backlogging traffic out by the refinery. And then you've got faulty traffic lights on Marine Drive at Dolphin Beach, plus a crash between Dolphin Beach and Sunset Beach, just adding to problems. West Coast Road, Marine Drive, Otto du Plessis, Bloberg Road, heavily backed up that side. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7:08. Good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Lots to come in the next little while. Don't forget, we'll be talking about artificial intelligence and government's policy towards artificial intelligence from 8:30. One of the questions I suppose I have, or two, what is the state of artificial intelligence right now? Is it having an impact on your life or not? That's the one thing. The second thing is, do we need a policy, or isn't the private sector just going to do this no matter what? And that seems to be what's happening in the United States, for example. So are we any different today? We'll sort of find out from 8:30. We'll talk about one of those cases that gets to the heart of how decisions that turn out to sort of be corrupt and have consequences are made in a moment. And then also, and I found it very interesting, I have several questions to ask, the sort of joint Afrikaner declaration people talking there about the pursuit of territory, for example. What does that mean? We'll speak to Dr. Tiens Elof in a little while. I think it's an important conversation. You know the number, 086 000 2032. It's 7:09.
I'm Sindisiwe Chikunga, the Minister of Transport in South Africa. Fellow South Africans, our nation is not where it was 30 years ago. Our bus rapid transport system from Rea Vaya to my city offers affordable commute for work and learning. Our regulated airports and airspace infrastructure through which millions of international passengers travel is world-class. In aviation, maritime, road and rail, we have produced pilots, engineers, air traffic controllers, train drivers, master mariners, and seafarers, opening doors to carriers once out of reach. We have grown South Africa together, building better communities.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more, just to be the one who buys your car. Will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da. We buy cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Lindelani ladies are on a massive search for 3 points, but TS Galaxy ladies say they will travel back from eThekwini with a song of jubilance. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the queens of the beautiful game, Lindelani Ladies FC versus TS Galaxy Ladies FC, on Sunday 28 April at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
11 after 7, good morning. Well, over the weekend, a statement was released. It's called a Joint Afrikaner Declaration. Claims to speak for around 2 million Afrikaans people in South Africa. It calls for what it says. It wants a cultural accord with government and wants government to essentially hold discussions with Afrikaners. It says the country and the Afrikaner community are in a serious crisis because of state failure. The person who appears to be leading this initiative is Dr. Theuns Elof. He is a spokesperson for the Afrikaner Leadership Network Group. He's played a very interesting and important role in our society going all the way back to the 1980s. Dr. Elof, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Nice to be with you. Thank you.
How do you define an Afrikaner? Who are you really representing?
Well, as with any other group, there's no definition of an Afrikaner. It's a self-identification process, something I think that modern people understand very well. You know, I self-identify as this or that. But I would largely say that this group of organizations are Afrikaans speaking. They have a common cultural culture and heritage, and they self-identify as Afrikaners. You can't take that away. So that's why, in principle, this group is open. And that's why this morning we will give an opportunity at the Foot Tracker Monument in Pretoria, where we're going to publicly launch this to give other groups and people also the chance. In addition, we have a website that has gone live this morning, where any South African can support at least the aims of this Afrikaner Club.
You say you want a cultural accord with government. What's a cultural accord?
I think in our discussions we've realized that many people see the word culture limited to what is called the Ministry of Arts and Culture. So singing, dancing, poetry, and so on. In the Afrikaans idiom, cultuur or culture is a much wider concept of how we live, where we live, who we interact with, where do our children go to school, language, religion, etc., etc. So it's a broader concept than call it a technical concept of arts and culture as in the ministry. So when we say a cultural accord, we mean it's not a party political accord because we're not in the party political space. We need for government to understand and hear us and then say, look, we understand that these rights are in the Constitution. We acknowledge these rights and we confirm these rights. That's the one part of it. The second part of it is that it has consequences. For a number of times now, organizations in the Afrikaans community have been asked by government to assist at, especially at local government level, but also at other levels. And that doesn't seem to get traction because we believe that there's no understanding of exactly how we can support the country going forward. And we think that such an accord would strengthen that possibility. And let me say this is not unlike what the House of Traditional Leaders has. We're a traditional community in South Africa. Other traditional communities have a House of Traditional Leaders where they at least see the deputy president or the president twice a year. We only see the government every 5 years when they call us before an election give us tea and sympathy and farewell until the next 5 years. So there's no constant communication to channel between what we believe is an important, not the important or the most important, but an important group in South Africa.
Okay, so you say other groups do that through the House of Traditional Leaders. I don't know if people will necessarily identify with that. Many will, of course. I think some people might feel you're asking for more than other people. So, for example, they might say, I don't think the Xhosa people or the Abavemba people have a sort of cultural accord with government or anything in a sort of formalized relationship apart from, you say, the House of Traditional Leaders. So I think the argument would go, are Afrikaans people, or is your group rather, asking for more than other people get?
I don't think so. So what we're asking, we say, is already in the Constitution, but it's not recognized by the government of the day. I mean, the whole thing of cultural rights in the Constitution as well as language rights, those stipulations or those sections of the Constitution are just not adhered to. And we believe they're often also broken. So what we're asking is not outside the Constitution, and secondly, it's not outside international law and customs. If you think of you read objectively what the United Nations say about the cultural rights of minorities, it's far stronger than what we have at the moment. Perhaps one other thing that may be controversial with the war in Gaza and so on, but for instance, from our side, now this is not government's fault, it's our own fault. If the government wants to know what the Jewish community wants to say or believe, they know that there's a Jewish Board of Deputies, and they contact them and they have discussions with them. We don't have that from our side. You know, we have been so far. We think now that this is the start of having a coherent group of, call it the middle ground of Afrikaners, who the government can talk to. So we see this cutting both ways. Not just that we asking things of government, we must also get our own house in order.
I mean, that leads to all sorts of conversations around identity. You say people who self-identify. Well, maybe. But that also leaves, even with the House of Traditional Leaders, and even if what you want happens, there's still many, many people left outside of all of that. And I don't know if really having sort of accords with government based on how we identify linguistically or ethnically or religiously is necessarily a good thing. Shouldn't we just have a relationship? I think you could make an argument along these lines. We should just have a relationship with with the government based on the fact that we're South Africans. Finish and Klaar.
Well, that's true too. I think we work with the concept of multiple identities. I always say I'm a human being, and I share that humanity with billions of people around the world. Secondly, I'm an African. I live in Africa. I have an affinity to Africa. Thirdly, I'm a South African. I share this country, and I'm proud of the country, and I want to work towards its well-being. Fourthly, I'm also a Christian, a Reformed Christian, sharing that with people around the world. And then I'm an Afrikaans speaker, and that bond I share with many others who are from the other communities, like the so-called colored community, even the black community. And then I'm an Afrikaner, and I share that identity with a group of people with a common culture and heritage and history. And then I always say I'm also a Doper, which is one of the smallest churches. So the point is that these things are often made to be seen as opposing each other. We say no, they're together, and I think the whole notion of Afrikanerskap and South Africanness is very well balanced, because so we say we want to be Afrikaners, but we want to be Afrikaners to be able to be South Africans and contribute to the country. I know that there are people who don't feel strong about language, especially in the English community. There are even some Afrikaans people who say, well, we're just South Africans. I think they can self-identify, but it doesn't exclude the right and preclude the right of others who say we also identify with culture and heritage. So I think it's a question of opinion, and I think what I've counted in the 12 sections of the statement, in 8 of them, the broader community South Africanness come to the fore. So it's really a balance, and as some of the media call it, we are here to build and we are here to stay. Well, actually, we're here to stay to build. So we cannot force people to believe our bona fides, but there it is. It's on the table.
In your declaration, you say specifically, and I'll quote this, the Constitution recognizes the pursuit of territory. Why is that so important it needs to be mentioned in your declaration?
Well, two things. Section 235 of the Constitution makes specifically provision for that, and we've not said anything that's not in Section 235. And perhaps 235 is a section of the Constitution that must be read again by South Africa 30 years on. It's still there. It's not out of the Constitution. That's one. The second one was a pragmatic question. Part of our constituency, not a big part, believes that an Orania option is important. But I must clearly state that Orania is not a separate country. And so we've made it possible for them to support this, although I don't want to live in Orania. I live very nicely where I am. But we recognize the right of people to be able to go and live in Orania. So that balance we had to take to get the broadest possible support. What Section 235 says is not secession or a Volksstaat or another country, sort of a Cape exit. It basically says that this Constitution does not preclude that notion that within the national territory of South Africa, cultural groups can have some form of self-determination. Obviously, that's not spelled out because it's not being implemented. But so it's not more and not less than Section 235 of the Constitution.
So all of that may be true, Dr. Elof, but I think that what it can sound like, I don't know if you want it to sound like this, but I think what it can sound like is that you're bending over backwards to get support from a group of people who deliberately exclude black people. And I'm talking specifically about Orania. And I think this is important. What people are going to hear, rightly or wrongly, maybe rightly, is that you are doing everything you can to exclude people who, frankly, are racist.
Well, I think the practice speaks to the contrary, Stephen. Orania has their own views. No one has ever been chased out of Orania. As I said, I'm not part of that. But the point is, the Constitution makes provision for that. Otherwise, Orania would have been shut down. And that's the issue here. Not whether what are the attitudes of people or not. The other point is that the majority, by far the majority of Afrikaners live inside South Africa, in our cities, in our towns. They say we're not going anywhere and we want to build. And I think that's the core message that people have to take this morning.
Dr. Tiens Elof, thank you. Spokesperson for the Afrikaner Leadership Network Group and academic and negotiations expert as well. Well, your views on that, 086 000 2032, 22 after 7.
I'm Sindisiwe Chikunga, the Minister of Transport in South Africa. Fellow South Africans, our nation is not where it was 30 years ago. Our bus rapid transport system from Rea Vaya to my city offers affordable commute for work and learning. Our regulated airports and airspace infrastructure through which millions of international passengers travel is world-class. In aviation, maritime, road and rail, we have produced pilots, engineers, air traffic controllers, train drivers, master mariners, and seafarers, opening doors to carriers once out of reach. We have grown South Africa together, building better communities.
Time. When you're a kid, it moves slower than a sloth trying to get through airport security. There is just so much of it. Skip forward a few years to your 20s. Time is still your friend. It says have some balance. Go party and have fun. Then your 30s hit. And time suddenly steps on the accelerator like it's trying to catch a traffic light before it goes red. 40s. Now time is moving faster than your 10-year-old on a sugar high. 50. You're desperately trying to save as much as you can, but time is moving so fast. And all you can think is, where did all the time go? That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time for some much-deserved you time. Now, isn't that a compelling enough reason to invest? Ellen Gray. Long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
Keeping up with your TV license balance inquiries is now simpler than ever. No more waiting in queues. No more phone calls. Just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 and secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
SAFM 104 to 107. Nationwide.
24 after 7, good morning. Around the country, you'll often hear claims and reports of corruption relating to how particular contracts went to particular companies that then didn't do the proper work. And as a result, a road's not finished, money's paid, the job simply never done. And the situation in Tshwane is shining a spotlight on this. Last week, an internal disciplinary hearing making a ruling in the case of 5 senior officials who made the decision to appoint Edwin Sodi's company to fix the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant. The company was paid 292 million rand. It didn't complete the work, and in the end, a disciplinary hearing finding the 5 officials who awarded the contract to this company guilty on just one count against them. Said they should be suspended for 1 month without pay. In other words, for the city, the officials that helped to create the problem are only suspended for a month. And the failure at the Rooiwal water plant led to the cholera outbreak in Hammanskraal that killed over 20 people. Spokesperson for the city of Tshwane is Selby Bakaba. Selby, good morning. You've decided to appeal this case. You're going to the Labour Court. Why?
Good morning, Steve Ovo and the listeners. We are going to the Labour Court to review the ruling of the chairperson of the disciplinary hearing, and not only the sanction, but we are reviewing the entirety of the findings, including the sanction, because we believe that the charges that the employees were facing are serious and are of such a nature that they deserve a harsher sanction.
Do you believe there was corruption here, that Edwin Sodi's company got this contract through some kind of corruption?
As the city, we were not investigating corruption, Steve Ovo. That part is being handled by the Hawks and SIU. We were investigating processes, supply chain processes, which we found that there were some irregularities in the awarding of the tender.
What the officials did, it seemed in a way that the disciplinary committee would have been appointed, I'm sure, by the city. So you now want to appeal that. Do you need to change the way the whole system operates?
Well, it's not about how the whole system operates. It's about, the seriousness of the charges and the manner in which the chairperson arrived at his ruling, in terms of dismissing the 3 charges, or finding the officials not guilty on 3 very serious charges, by the way, and finding them guilty on only 1 charge. And if you look at the charge on which they were found guilty and you compare that with the sanction, you can see that the sanction is not proportional to the finding, because he makes the finding is scathing and the charge is very serious. But if you compare that with the sanction, you can see that there's a disjuncture there. So you could see that there's something that we were worried about, and we thought, let's review this ruling and to the Labour Court. And the officials will not, Steve Ovo, just to correct you, will not be placed on 1 month suspension without pay. That is the ruling of the chairperson. But we have decided that the officials will remain suspended pending a review of the ruling at the Labour Court.
Selby Bakaba, thank you. Spokesperson for the city of Tshwane, 28 after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Oh dear, Kaizer Chiefs, oh dear.
Oh dear, all of those words, Divo. Amakhosi, the mighty Amakhosi, tumbling out of the top 8. They lost 1-0, and that was to lowly Richards Bay. Now, the Natal Rich Boys there grabbing a much-needed victory. Chiefs, despite dominating display, couldn't convert possession to points. Now they'll prepare to host SuperSport United next Saturday, hoping for some redemption and climbing back up the league table. Polokwane City and Cape Town City battled to a 2-2 draw, leaving Cape Town City losing ground in the top half of the table, while Polokwane sit just a notch below in 11th place. Stellenbosch maintaining their epic unbeaten run with a 2-1 come-from-behind victory over TS Galaxy yesterday. Elsewhere, Bayer Leverkusen extended their unbeaten run to 45 games in all competitions with a 1-1 draw at Borussia Dortmund, leaving and keeping their dreams of becoming the first team to go unbeaten through a Bundesliga season alive. Now, in the heart of Joburg over the weekend, the Lions, they roared to a spectacular victory over Leinster, and it was a decisive win that bolstered their playoff aspirations. They had a commanding 30-12 victory. Here's their captain, Marius Lowe.
If you want to be in the top 8,
our main focus was, we need to win our games at home. It doesn't matter who the team is. Even though Leinster is a quality side, we saw that again over the weekend. But any team that they will bring over to South Africa will be well prepared, well prepped, and they will be up for the challenge. So whichever team they bring, we must just know, it's going to be a great challenge for us.
Meanwhile, the Stormers and the Bulls faced setbacks, with the Stormers losing to Ospreys and the Bulls falling to Munster. Finally, the Olympic champion Perez Jepchirchir stormed to victory in the women's only world record time of 2 hours, 16 minutes and 16 seconds in the London Marathon. Here's Jepchirchir.
I was excited last year to be third place, even though again I was coming from injury, but I was so happy for my results. And on Sunday, I know the team is strong, and I know it's not easy. A lot of tension is here and there. We are running with strong ladies. I know it's not easy, but in God, I know we are going to make.
We'll have more sport on Sunrise, top of the hour with headlines. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. In the next half hour, we'll talk about accounting standards. Didn't you see accounting standards trend over the weekend? Neither did I. You were with SFM leading the conversation, 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the Limpopo Health MEC, Dr. Poppy Ramatuba, is today expected to provide an update on the identification and repatriation of the remains of people killed in a bus crash in the province last month. The High Court in Durban will today deliver judgment in the ANC's trademark case. The ANC had hauled the Umkhonto weSizwe party to court, accusing it of violating the Trademarks Act. And Egypt has welcomed home a 3,400-year-old statue depicting the head of King Ramses II. This after it was stolen and smuggled out of the country more than 3 decades ago. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Stays heavy around Galuli's interchange this morning with a crash on the N12 and R24 routes coming in from the Ekurhuleni side. That collision near Boeing Road Bridge. So both the N12 and R24 very heavy into Galuli's, and then it stays heavy as you get past Galuli's and try to queue up into the N3 North towards a crash at Linksfield Road. So the N3 badly backed up out of Albert and Germiston all the way through Galuli's and into Edenvale. So very heavy disruption on multiple routes out that way. The N1 North passing Soweto is heavy. The roadworks just as you approach the Maresburg exit still in place as we head into a new week. N14, the Krugersdorp Highway up to Brockfontein interchange. That's quite heavy for motorists that are Pretoria bound. And 2 big lights out this morning. Eski and Patheli at WFN Como. That's a really heavy queue into CBD. And also Steve Biko at Soutpansberg. Those lights are down, so heavy coming through Gazina time side this morning. Durban, there's an issue on the M4 with a broken down truck. It's a stationary truck on the M4 Southern Freeway at Jacobs. As you turn off the N2, you're straight away into traffic on that section of the Southern Freeway. Cape Town, heavy coming out of Tableview. There's been a crash on Marine Drive before Sunset Beach. Traffic lights are down at Dolphin Beach. So that side of Tableview, very heavy. And then a crash on the Kuberg Road departure route just by Plattekloof Road, just after Plattekloof Road. So there's a lot of traffic coming out passing the refinery. And the N2 inbound with a taxi and bus colliding near Bunga Avenue in Langa. The N2 inbound from the airport's heavy into that scene. And then a breakdown at Hospital Bend, keeping the N2 busy right through to that stationary vehicle. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
In Taolengla, morning again. How are the markets looking?
Well, Asian markets kicked off the week on a good note with those stocks advancing. The Japanese Nikkei rising 0.6% and the Asia down gaining 0.8%. This comes as focus shifted from Middle East tensions to company earnings and economic data for some insight into the direction of central bank policy moving forward. Now, over in the US, futures are in the green, but there has been some concerns as the US stock market's bull run hit a rough patch. We saw those bond yields spike this month on fears that a robust economy is helping to keep inflationary pressures alive. Back at home, the all share gaining 0.13% at Friday's close, and the rand making gains today, trading at 19.10 against the dollar.
And the JSE is having a big shake-up.
Now, the JSE, not particularly the boss, but the company that owns the boss, is making some changes. That's as it attempts to keep more companies listed on the exchange. And so it's thinking of splitting the main board into two segments, one that caters to larger companies and the other that caters to smaller companies. Now, this comes as it continues to deal with a delisting trend, which has resulted in the size of the boss decreasing by half in the last 20 years. Now, if this plan is implemented, the main board will be segmented into prime and general, with the latter board for small cap stocks. Now, the JSE says the move will work for these smaller companies as they'll benefit from a reduction of regulatory hurdles and a reduction in costs when it comes to listing on the JSE.
And then Old Mutual getting the thumbs up to launch a bank.
That's right. Now, there will be a new kid in the banking block before the end of the year. This comes after the SARB's Prudential Authority awarded Old Mutual a banking license, getting it a step closer to that big launch. So Old Mutual is not a new player in the banking space, as the insurance company used to own the largest stake in Nedbank. It sold that stake in 2018 and announced plans to jump back into the banking sector around 2022. Now, it says the new bank will be digitally led using AI, which will help it drive down costs, and it's also targeting customers earning around 5,000 to 80,000 per month. This puts it in direct competition with Capitec. So there's been some analysts raising concerns about this move, saying that the market is already oversaturated, but Old Mutual has assured investors that it'll get its share of the banking pie, highlighting how it'll get customers from its system that it already has through the insurance arm of it all.
Ntaling Lechelep, thanks very much indeed. Ntaling, of course, back with us tomorrow. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, lots to talk about. You heard that conversation around the Joint Afrikaner Declaration, of course, sort of taking a side trip through Orania in a strange way. You heard that conversation as well around dealing with corruption, conversations around Spaza shops this morning as well. William on the line from Kuma. William, hi.
Look, Stephen, thank you. Look, Stephen, remember, we black South Africans here in South Africa, we used to have Spaza shops before the foreign nationals overcrowded us. That's the point, Stephen, and maybe you don't know about it. Now, Stephen, had it been you, unfortunately, as they came, they overcrowded us, and then we realized we at the end have seen ourselves as useless, and then at the end of the day, we had zero Spaza shops as black South Africans who should be empowered, Stevens, because there's no job. Now, the gentleman, the minister is on point that these Spaza shops must pay tax to help the government with that minimal amount, Stephen, just like the taxes, Stephen. I've heard you saying that maybe it's a little money, blah, 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 blah. It won't be okay. It will be okay, Stephen, because actually the anger is here. These Spaza shops actually should come back to us, black people. And charity begins at home first. Like Mauma Pilu was aiming at coming and empower poor black people who failed to manage their Spaza shops before. And then the foreign nationals, they came and they took them. It's very excruciating.
Okay, so William, I mean, I was talking about money with tax because the idea would be that, there would be tax. That was where I was going with that and saying that. But I know, of course, how important they are. I mean, of course I do. And how they are to the people who run them as well. William and Kuma, strong views there. I mean, I don't know if anything's going to change. That's the real thing, isn't it, with Spaza shops? 086 000 2032. Voice notes coming through about that and other issues, including the conversation around the Joint Afrikaner Declaration.
Morning, Steve. Your discussion with the Afrikaner Afrikaner representative there shows that the nation-building project has not succeeded as much as we would love to, but also the danger of reinventing as well as re-allowing people uniting around cultural or race is another point. When are we starting an honest discussion of, as you correctly say, of building a South African nation? Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, look, it's a very interesting conversation. I mean, last week we were speaking to someone who was talking, agitating for a sort of separate Zulu kingdom. I mean, this has been the big features of the last 10 years, hasn't it? This idea of sort of pushing us apart rather than pulling us together. Who won 2 World Cups? What was their slogan? Do you remember? Other voice notes coming through this morning around Spaza shops.
Morning, Steve. Morning, South Africa. I just want to weigh in on the plethora of the political Spaza shops which have been formed or emerging. Look, what does it mean at a symbolic level for black unity, for African unity, and for the unity of this country? What does it really mean? Does it mean that we are kissing unity goodbye? There's nothing called unity amongst black people. And the emergence of this plethora of political Spaza shop is not happening within the white community. It's in the black community. That's the big question. Major from Guatemala.
Major, thank you. Yeah, look, there are lots of questions around Spaza shops. 20 minutes to 8.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Well, on Friday, there was an important ruling in the High Court in Gauteng that the Road Accident Fund was wrong to change the accounting system it uses to assess whether it's running itself properly. The RAF CEO, Collins Letswalo, changed the system to use what is called International Public Sector Accounting Standards 42. Now, that system is not recognized by the SA Accounting Standards Board. The result of this was under the system that the Road Accident Fund was using, the fund had a liability of 331 billion rands. Under the new system, they had just a liability of 34 billion rand. The people who took them to court, the court dispute was between them and the Auditor General. Kaya Satola is an independent analyst and expert on matters accountancy. Kaya, good morning.
Good morning to the listeners.
This can be very technical, but to me, it looks like the court has told the Road Accident Fund, you can't just change the rules to make your numbers look better. Is that too simplistic?
I think it captures the essence of the story, and the problem that emerged a couple of years ago is that the Road Accident Fund has always had this problem of accounting for liabilities that it quite simply cannot afford. And the problem with the business model is that the Road Accident Fund is responsible for essentially ensuring all the accidents that happen in the roads everywhere in the country. Now, the problem with that is that obviously they have to keep estimating what the ultimate claims might be, even though before they are lodged. And in the actual estimates that you get the number of around 330 billion rand. What then also happened is that at that point in time, the International Public Sector Accounting Standards Board was in the process of developing a new accounting standards for social benefit funds. And social benefit funds are something like the South African Social Security Agency, for example. So what the Road Accident Fund argued is that they also were considering themselves, well, they regard themselves as a social benefit fund. In other words, they should be allowed to use the accounting standard relating to social benefit funds. Now, whether that argument had merit or not was not as important as the fact that absolutely no state entity can unilaterally change the accounting model it uses without the concurrence of the Accounting Standards Board. And that is really what the heart of the dispute is. So the Auditor General said, well, until there is a directive that allows you to change onto the new accounting standard, I have to audit you on the basis of what you are supposed to do, and you're not applying it. So on that basis, I'm going to give an opinion that indicates that you are breaking the rules. And that's been the dispute for the past 3 years.
I mean, clearly the SA Accounting Standards Board, I mean, their view must almost be final, right? That's their job, is to decide which standard which body in government must use.
Yes, definitely. And the problem here seems to be that the Road Accident Fund has not really engaged with the Accounting Standards Board on a question of whether they can indeed revisit the business model, revisit the accounting model, and then adopt the new one. So until that is actually done, the Auditor General is merely a bystander in the sense that the Auditor General arrives at an institution and says, okay, according to the rules, this is the accounting standard you're supposed to use, and you're not using it. So if you guys want to change the accounting standard, that has nothing to do with the Auditor General. It's a conversation negotiations that should be happening between the Road Accident Fund and the Accounting Standards Board. Why that has not been finalized or even initiated is something that only Collins Letswalo can actually explain.
I'm almost certain, Kaya, I mean, I don't know Collins Letswalo at all, but I just feel in my bones that there will be an appeal here, and then that will be appealed, and that we could still be 2 years away from finality.
Yes, it will be going down the appeals process. I think we've already heard from the spokesperson of the Road Accident Fund arguing that they had 17 merits they believe should have been traversed by the courts, and the court apparently ignored all of that. So obviously they believe that there's something to be appealed here. But again, it's one of those very, very unfortunate situations where those that are litigating using public funds seem to essentially bypass the logic that should be applied in that decision making. Because again, here, as I said, the Auditor General simply says, until the rules are changed, we have to audit you according to the rules that have been told you're supposed to apply. So therefore, this is the answer. The Auditor General's position cannot change until the underlying issues are addressed, which is the simple question of, can the Road Accident Fund use the social benefit standards in order to compile its reports? And that is a question only they and the Accounting Standards Board must engage in, and then inform the Auditor General whether they've reached consensus or not, and then say this is the way going forward. It still wouldn't affect the state of affairs as it was in 2021, because the Auditor General was correct in saying that in 2021, the answer was 331 billion rand, not 34.
In the real world, for people who are victims of accidents, why is this important? I mean, does a liability of 331 billion, does it matter if the liability is that or if it's 34 billion?
The cruel irony is that it essentially doesn't matter, because the reality here is that whether the number is 34 billion or the number is 331 billion rand, we know that the Road Accident Fund struggles to raise enough cash in order to actually cover its liabilities. So in fact, one of the big issues that has emerged since Collins Letswalo became the CEO was a simple question of how to change the way in which claims are processed and the way in which claims are funded in order to make it a bit more affordable. One of the big issues that the Road Accident Fund has kept emphasizing is the extensive involvement of legal practitioners in the entire process. It is legal practitioners that lodge claims on behalf of clients, and it's obviously legal practitioners that get a cut out of that. And Letswano's view is that those middlemen are not helping. They are making the entire process even more onerous and even more expensive. But the big problem is that the Road Accident Fund is funded by a levy, which on its own is simply inadequate to cover liabilities that arise even on an annual basis, let alone the accumulated liabilities of the 330 billion rand that we've seen accumulating over the past couple of decades.
If this is appealed, and presumably it goes, and for 2 years, it takes another 2 years, so we're in 2026, for something that was changed a couple of years ago, what happens then? Does the Auditor General then have to go all the way back, and all of those accounts have to be redone under what would then legally be the correct standard?
Well, that's the big problem here, in that the Auditor General has indeed issued a final opinion based on the state of affairs, as it were. So what the Road Accident Fund has been trying to do is they've been trying to get that entire audit opinion set aside. So obviously, if the courts had agreed with the Road Accident Fund, which of course they're never going to do, but if they'd agreed, then it would have said to the Auditor General, you are wrong in your application of particular processes, so therefore go back and redo the work. So in the very unlikely scenario that the Auditor General loses, whether it's 2025 or 2026, then of course the point would be, well, actually you were incorrect in how you approached this matter in 2021. Go and revisit it and issue an opinion that is commensurate with the new legal standing, which of course we do not think is going to materialize. So that would practically be the implications of the Auditor General losing the case.
Kaya Satole, thank you. Independent analyst on accounting. Really appreciate the time. 12 minutes now to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Mabari and Bombela, hi. You want to talk about a project in KwaZulu-Natal. Good morning, Mabari.
Good morning, Stephen, and the listeners of SAFM. Look, I was quite delighted, having the stories. A massive 24 billion rand in Nkomazi water scheme. It's quite a
Mabari, just speak as loudly as you can, please. You're talking about a 24 billion rand in Nkomazi water scheme, yeah?
Yes, I'm told that it's going to be supporting more than 5 municipalities, including eThekwini itself. I mean, this is a government at work. I mean, I'm saying it's a mega project that has been implemented in this administration, which I think, to me, it will really deal with a lot of challenges in KZN.
Sure.
Strain in the water services. I think this is at work, and I think that we must actually commend this progress by Minister Mkhunu.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Mabari, thank you. I mean, I'm in a season where I have to ask almost everyone this question. Do you belong to a political party?
Stephen?
Yep. Mabari, do you belong to a political party?
Yes, I can hear you. What I say?
Do you belong to a political party?
No, I don't really belong to a political party, but when I see good work, I really compliment. I use what we call complementary and contradictory approach to service delivery in the country, yes.
Okay, well, carrot in the stick. Mabari, thanks very much. All right, on the line from Bombela, honestly held view. Kirk in Cape Town, hi. Spaza Shops, good morning.
Good morning. So the Spaza shop issue that foreigners have capitalized on the shortfall or shortcomings of the local Spaza shop owners and operators really troubles me. I can't understand why government doesn't get involved or didn't get involved initially with small businesses that are operating. You know, these guys have been around for, 50, 60, 70 years in townships at locations. And if they've been operating for all this time without any interference of anybody, and their threat is then posed by foreign nationals who come in legally or illegally and start operating these Spaza shops. Why did government not incentivize the locals to mitigate the threat of the foreign invasion, inverted commas? We've seen it with the Chinese who operate shops in every mall in Joburg, Cape Town, Durban, all over the show, Bloemfontein even. We've seen it with the Ethiopians, the Sudanese, the Nigerians. If we incentivize the locals, it would make South Africa less attractive to the foreigners who come in and, in a sense, mess up our economy because of the tax implications. Look, they provide the service, yes, but at what expense do they provide the service?
You know, Kirk, it seems to me that maybe there's an important conversation to have here, because you would think that people coming in would find it harder to do business than people who've been working here for, as you say, 50 years. So,
absolutely.
It doesn't make sense to me,
You try to go to China and open a shop in China and see how far you'll get. Go to any of the other African countries. I cannot believe that you could turn up in Ethiopia and in 5 years' time have a burgeoning, booming sub-economy run by South Africans. I can't imagine that will happen.
Well, there are African business people in China I'm aware of. So I hear you, Kirk. I don't disagree with your main point, but there are obviously examples everywhere as well. Kirk, thank you. Tabiso and Polokwane, hi. You want to talk about a newspaper?
Yes, Stephen. You see, Stephen, I sometimes get shocked of my life. To what extent do we hold media accountable for peddling lies and all of that? And then the Sunday World publishes this headline says the ANC begs Mbeki to campaign for them during this election.
That's the same as the headline at sabcnews.com this morning, Tabiso. So what's wrong with the headline?
Yes. And Mbeki, through its own channels of communication and Facebook, comments and say that it's wrong for people to peddle rumors on a Sunday. People must not lie on Sunday.
Okay, well, I didn't see that he had said that, but as I understand the SABC News story, this was a quote from President Ramaphosa.
If you check its Facebook page, you'll realize that the former president responded quite very, he was very decisive in his response to say that he has said in a public platform that he's going to campaign during these elections, and therefore for the media to then see a story in publishing that is being begged to campaign is something else. It's something that we... Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Tabiso, I'm on the media WhatsApp group for the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. There's no response to the article there, so I don't know why you would choose to do it on Facebook and not in the media group.
Yeah, well, it's a public platform, and if you see the response, Stephen, you will then realize how he had to respond like he did yesterday because of the headline that was put by Sunday World. To say he has said that in a public platform, and we all know, particularly during the UNISA conversation, to say he's going to campaign, and then therefore being backed is something else. that is being bagged now and that and all of that. And I think at some point, maybe because it's election time and we are, grappling for headlines here and there, sometimes it's always important when we grapple for headlines to be able to look into these particular issues or facts. It's quite very much important. I'm just saying, Stephen, maybe perhaps it's something that is worth looking at.
Sure.
Yes.
All right. No, Tabisa, look, I hear you, I think, on the line from Polokwane, just to say that, people can complain to the press council. The former president is able to do that. And the President Ramaphosa, this is from sabcnews.com now, who was in KwaZulu-Natal over the weekend, says the party's campaign will see the introduction of former Deputy Presidents David Mabuza Kgalema Motlanthe and Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka and Baleka Mbete. It also says that the ANC will be rolling out more heavyweights, such as former President Thabo Mbeki and other leaders for its campaign. So, I don't know. We'll have to see. 6 minutes to 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just a quick update. There's still no traffic lights coming into Pretoria. Eskia and Pathali at WFN Como. That's a very heavy run through. The crash on Joburg's N3 North at Linksfield, plus the broken down vehicle further up at Modderfontein Road have been cleared. So the N3, although it's heavy from Germiston through Edenvale, should be clearing. The N12 and R24 routes remain heavy. Coming in from Ekurhuleni, there is a crash before you get to Galilees after those highways have merged. The breakdown on Durban's N2 South going into Spaghetti Junction. That's heavy from Inanda Road. A breakdown on the M4 at Jacobs, causing a big backlog from the N2 onto the Southern Freeway. And Cape Town, a crash and no traffic lights coming out of Tableview on Marine Drive. That's at Dolphin Beach. No traffic lights. A crash before Sunset Beach. It's a heavy backlog on West Coast Road to Marine Drive, and of course all around the Bayside Shopping Mall Junction. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation.
Well, plans in Gauteng to launch a new e-hailing app with the taxi industry and the Gauteng Department of Transport. And of course, there's been, how do I put this, a little bit of competition between the taxi industry and people who drive Uber and Bolt. The e-hailing industry, Theo Malele, is the spokesperson for the National Taxi Alliance. They've been involved in this. Theo, good morning.
Good morning to you and good morning to your listeners.
How's this e-hailing app going to work?
This indigenous product, it's totally owned by the taxi industry, but how it's going to work, it is going to empower even the e-hailers themselves and the taxi industry. So basically people have to sort of download the app. In actual fact, e-hailers are to register with us in South Africa to ensure that we control all of the money does not escape South Africa, and it rotates among South Africans and empowers South Africans at the same time. And it is also featured with good safety products.
Okay, sure. Theo, I'm sorry, let me get to the crux of the question in a way. I appreciate everything you say. If I leave the SABC radio park and I go out stand in the corner of Auckland Park, right, and I stand there and I use the Shisa app, what kind of car is coming? Is it is it a Corolla? Is it a yellow quadricycle? Is it a minibus taxi?
No, it is not the minibus taxi. We entering this disruptive technology space by allowing the small vehicles that are currently doing the rounds, the little Corollas and all the small sedans. So that's basically the mode that would be actually doing the rounds in this e-hailing service.
Okay, and we know that, for example, with Uber is controlled by Uber, an American company. They get, depends who you ask, but they get about 25% of each ride. In this case, I presume you also have a similar model where the driver gets the majority of the money. Where does the rest of the money, the fee for running it, go to? Does that go to the taxi industry?
Yes, it does. And it also, 10% of the business, it goes to the e-hailers themselves, basically to ensure that they too are empowered. And every taxi operator in the Gauteng province, by virtue of being a taxi operator, they would also be becoming shareholders in Shesha. There is a stake for them, so that there is peace and harmony in our operations.
So when the driver does the trip, right, what percentage of the fee are they getting?
Well, basically currently 31% of what they are generating goes overseas.
Yeah.
Now, everything that they generate stays within our shores, and it shows that less than 25% services the application and everything that has to do with it. So they're saving a whooping almost 6% from what they currently are paying, and they also stand to have 10% stake in the business itself.
Okay, so it's a trip for 100 rand. They get what, 75 rand?
Yeah, they get about 75 rand,
okay.
And the 25 rand then gets split for the cost of the company, and a part thereof also goes to them.
Okay, no, I understand now. Thank you. And does that mean one person can have a little car, and can they have the Uber app and the Bolt app and the Shisa app? You don't mind, and they can pick and choose which way they go?
Well, they can choose, but the thing is, the actual cost of operating, it would actually force them to actually join Shesha and forget about these overseas applications and just join the indigenous South African one.
No, sure. I'm just trying to work out if you're trying to stop them, doing different things or not. Do you have any predictions on how many people are going to use it in the first year or so?
Well, we're looking at attracting first at 10,000 e-hailers to be in our system. And that would then pave the way for us to get more. But we're looking at over 1 million on an annual basis.
Theo Malela, thank you very much indeed. Spokesperson for the National Taxi Alliance. You are with SFM leading the conversation. It's 8 o'clock.
In our top stories, Limpopo Health MEC to provide an update on bus crash victims' repatriation, and High Court to rule on ANC MK Party trademark case. Good morning. The Limpopo Health MEC, Dr. Poppy Ramathuba, is today expected to provide an update on the identification and repatriation of the remains of people killed in a bus crash in the province last month. 45 Botswana nationals were killed in the crash at the Mamatlakala Bridge between Mokopane and Marken shortly before the Easter weekend. Dr. Ramathuba's spokesperson is Tilibali Muaba.
So the briefing will take place on Monday, the 22nd of April 2024 at Mokopane Hospital at 11 o'clock, and it will include members of the South African Police Service Victim Center, Biology Section of the Forensic Science Laboratory, and Forensic Pathology Services, who will be finalizing the packaging of the deceased remains.
Consumers are enjoying one of the longest periods free of rolling blackouts in years. This as Eskom says it has sufficient generation capacity and emergency reserves to meet demand. It says rolling blackouts will remain suspended until further notice. The power utility has not imposed rotational blackouts for more than 3 weeks. Eskom's spokesperson, Daphne Mukwena.
This decision comes after 25 consecutive days of uninterrupted suspension. Unplanned outages are currently at 13,566 megawatts, while planned maintenance has been reduced to 5,507 megawatts. A total of 2,660 megawatts is planned to be restored by Monday evening. The evening peak demand forecast for today is 26,434 megawatts. Eskom will provide an update next Friday afternoon or promptly communicate should any significant changes occur.
In election news, the High Court in Durban will today deliver judgment in the ANC's trademark case. The ANC had hauled the Umkhonto weSizwe party to court, accusing it of violating the Trademarks Act by using the name and logo similar to that of the governing party's disbanded Umkhonto weSizwe military wing. Zuleka Kodashe reports.
The ANC had anchored its arguments on the common law principle of passing off, that is, a misrepresentation of an association. The party believes the use of the name by the new party would lead to voter confusion at the May polls. However, the jurisdiction of the court is imperative because without it, the court cannot consider the merits of the arguments before it. Advocate Dalim Mpofu Senior Counsel, who represented the MK party in the matter, argued that the Electoral Court was the correct forum to ventilate the matter as the ANC had already invoked Section 16, subsection 2 of the Electoral Commission Act.
The EFF leader Julius Malema says there are people who are determined to undermine him. He has responded to criticism that those who will vote for the party in the 2024 elections will be funding his lifestyle. Malema was speaking in Midrand in Gauteng yesterday, where the EFF held one of its meetings as it gears up for the elections.
So the accusation that I do this to finance my lifestyle is necessitated by the fact that you can't falter me politically. I will start splitting hair and trying to find fault with him. He doesn't have a degree, woodwork, what, I fix that. I fix that. And then you come with this, I fix that. Where I'm wrong, I accept and I fix. They say you're overweight, I fix that.
And finally, Egypt has welcomed home a 3,400-year-old statue depicting the head of King Ramses II. This after it was stolen and smuggled out of the country more than 3 decades ago. The statue is now in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, but not on display. Recapping the top story, the Limpopo Health MEC, Dr. Poppy Ramatuba, is today expected to provide an update on the identification and repatriation of the remains of people killed in a bus crash in the province last month. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you in your SFM sports headlines. It's rugby. The Stormers, they plan to regroup after a tough defeat over the weekend. They'll take on table toppers Leinster. And in golf, Scotty Scheffler swings towards a record 4th win. All this and more just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
In 12 and R24 routes from Ekurhuleni, very heavy into Galulis this morning. A crash before Galulis, backlogging traffic on both routes, but there's also a collision on the N12 in that mix around the Edenvale exit. So N12 even worse with the queue back towards Jet Park Road. That's heavy. N1 out of Soweto stays queuing up towards Maresburg. The right lane closure for roadwork still in place there, and a bit of traffic on the N1 N14 routes getting through Brockfontein for a turn into Pretoria. That's an earlier truck crash just before Jean Avenue. Durban side, 2 breakdowns this morning, one on the N2 South at Spaghetti Junction, delays coming down from Inanda Road, another on the M4, the Southern Freeway, still with us at Jacobs. So traffic backlogging from the N2 Highway, merge onto the M4, you're straight away into the traffic. Cape Town, a bus and taxi colliding into Inbala-Bunga Avenue, and Marine Drive out of Tableview stays slow, backlogs from Sunningdale through to Sunset Beach, including some lights out of action at Dolphin Beach Hotel. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 minutes after 8. Good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Good to have you along with us this morning. Plenty going on as always. You heard that conversation around the joint Afrikaner memorandum. I thought that was interesting. There are other conversations too, of course, going on. Spaza shops, a big issue this morning. I don't know, taxing Spaza shops, probably not really happening, but also issues around registration of Spaza shops. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence in a little while. It's a really important conversation around how it's changing the world. Is it really changing the world? Things like that. I think those are sort of some of the important conversations that will come out of it. It's 7 after 8. Good morning.
For over 40 years, people around the world have been spinning and winning thanks to the Wheel of Fortune. Now it's your turn to take the prize as this legendary game show finally launches in South Africa weekdays 7:30 p.m. on S3, plus an omnibus Saturdays at 10:30 a.m. with rebroadcast on SABC2 9:30 a.m. Don't miss your chance to be part of history. Enter now on www.wheeloffortunesa.tv and let the wheel decide your fate. Channel your inner wordsmith on Wheel of Fortune on S3. Open up.
Business owners, don't waste your time searching for an employee that has it all. They do not exist. But I will tell you what does exist. The Kia K2700 Workhorse. It's versatile, powerful, and reliable. It also arrives on time every day. Save your cash with no deposit and only pay 5,799 Rand per month. It's the business partner you've been waiting for. Up your game with the Kia K2700 Workhorse. Visit kia.co.za for more. T's and C's apply.
Kia. Movement that inspires.
Rewind the years and relive all the action on the A-Team. John Hannibal Smith leads the team of 4 members of a former commando outfit. His plans may be unorthodox, but they're effective. Lieutenant Templeton Pegg, second in command, a smooth-talking conman, and the appropriator of vehicles and other useful items. The team pilot, Captain Howling Mad Murdoch. Howling Mad. His name says it all. Sergeant First Class Mr. T, the team's strongman and mechanic. Join them as they embark on epic adventures and missions, all in attempts to clear their names, weekdays at 12. Channel your inner A-game with the A-Team, only on S3.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
9 minutes after 8 the time. Ali on the line from Mahakeng. Ali, hi. You want to talk about knowledge systems? Go for it.
Yes, indigenous knowledge systems, Stephen.
All right.
Its contribution to our system. You know, this thing of Africa being the cradle of humanity. In that the indigenous knowledge systems of Japan gave us the Daihatsu, the what. The other nations, they gave us the Ford, the Mercedes-Benz. The others went to the moon, and when we are still broomstick pilots flying at night and entering other people's homes without being seen, but being unable to enter into the banks and steal money. We've got so much knowledge as Africans, or the knowledge which leads us nowhere, my brother, until we go back to that issue of now, somewhere not somewhere roads. No, somewhere the Holy Spirit must come down and revive the African indigenous system so that we can go back to God, not to the ancestors who are dead, so that we can shine forth as Africa. My brother, right now you say you are going to talk about artificial intelligence. Africa has run past that stage, but in the darker side of it, of bewitching one another and pulling others down.
All right.
Standing on the backs of the Europeans to get where we want to get to.
All right. Ali, I think I sort of hear you. I mean, I don't know. In a way, these things often come down to organization, you know, and it's about the harnessing of things.
The thing is, the knowledge system which we are proud of you, Stephen. Look, you go to the Europeans, talk of inventions, talk of cell phones, talk of automobiles, talk of submarines. Africans are going to the sea, my brother, to spend days there. We already have long overcome the colonizers before they colonized us. It's a dollar our indigenous knowledge systems worked.
All right, Ali on the line from Mahakeng. I think I understand what you're saying there. Let's go to John in Davidson. John, hi, Spaza Shops.
Hello, Stephen.
Go for it.
The problem with you is that you're hardly listening to what people advise you or tell you. People who have got experience, people who know the situation. You always pretend to know everything. That's what the problem I have. Number one, the question of Spaza Shop, you always make a pre-decision to say you don't think it will contribute. These people are many. It will make a big difference. What is the use of taxing a teacher or a policeman to death when you have got a lot of people who jointly can contribute a lot? Number one.
Yeah, but John, how much profit is the Spaza Shop making? Do you know? I'm not going to say that I know, but do you know?
The fact that there are people who come illegally, sell illegal things, own Spaza Shop illegal, they are not regulated, and you give them somebody just told you cannot go to Ethiopia and just quickly open a business and it flourish. Because there are rules and regulations that favor local people. You as a person who comes from outside, illegal, you need to contribute something. You cannot just get everything for free.
Sure.
Sure. Even there comes a time when things affect black people especially, you really have to sympathize. The other day I wanted to talk to you when you were saying that South Africa is getting Cuban doctors who are coming here at the expense of local doctors. Doctors can speak for themselves. to get Cuban doctors in South Africa. But because most whites hate Cuba, it becomes an issue every day.
Well, John, it wasn't, John, the person we spoke to, who was from Action SA in the end, was Dr. José Letlape, and he gave his view, and that's why we invited him on.
But you are passionate about that thing. When it's about a country that you don't love.
John, I don't think I've ever said much critical of Cuba on this show at all. I mean, of course there are questions to ask about any system, but I don't think you can claim that I'm against Cuba as a result of it.
No, most whites, like, and especially you're also anti-Cuba.
All right, well, John... Yeah, John, look, I mean, you can have that view if you like. I think we need to be careful about saying, you must have that view because most of this or most of that. I don't like that. But anyway, we've heard you. John on the line from Davyton, 14 minutes after 8.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
This conversation is brought to you by KZN Film. South Africa is marking 30 years of freedom and democracy and aims to mobilize the country to celebrate the gains, achievements and the milestone of 30 years of democratic rule and living in a free and democratic society. To commemorate the significant milestone for the country, KZN Film will be screening the documentary series Truth Be Told on the 26th of April at the BAT Centre, displaying heartfelt stories of individuals who lost loved ones because of the atrocities of apartheid. If you would like to attend, follow KZN Film on their social media pages on Facebook and at the KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission or Instagram at KZN Film. The first 5 to respond will be added to the guest list. This morning, we're going to talk to the film producer, Enver Samuels. Enver, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
What inspired you to capture these stories? What kind of films have been made around this?
I think my inspiration primarily came from the fact that I'd previously done 3 documentaries on 2 on Ahmed Timor and 1 on Dulcie September. And all the sort of stories look at apartheid and killings during apartheid. And I think primarily the reason what attracted me to these type of stories was that these names were relatively unknown. And we can conjure up the names of Mandela, Sisulu, and Tambo quite easily, but the names in the 6 stories of the Truth Be Told series, almost anyone, if asked, who's Pila Porsche Ndwandwe, who's Ntombi Kubeka, would most definitely kind of say, I don't know, and it's those type of stories that I like to tell.
In Berlin, in Germany, there's a museum around the Holocaust and how it started. Yes. And one of the things that they do is they encourage young German people from when they're at school to look after the little nameplate of where a Jewish person who was killed is kept. And that creates this relationship. And in a way, this reminds me of that. You're trying to get people to understand what actually happened.
Exactly. And the unique thing about the series is that the child is telling the story. So these activists were killed in the 80s and had a child or had children, and that child is an adult today, and that child is the one that narrates the story. So we see this with this sort of visceral transgenerational trauma being passed on from generation to generation. And, we see it through the child's lens of life, basically. And I think that's the unique angle, because they're not just historical pieces, but the child's eyes makes this a very present story.
I mean, when you look at stories like this, and some of them even now must be shocking and heartbreaking and a sort of reminder. And I don't think we're at a point where people say, don't talk about apartheid. I think we are at a point where people, younger people, don't quite know what it was or what happened. I mean, how do we make sure that sort of thing, what happened, how it happened, isn't forgotten?
Mm-hmm. Yes, very important. I mean, you hit it there on the nail there, because it's very shocking. We use archive from the TRC. We tend to forget that these seminal moments in our history, when cops came and primarily to get amnesty, laid it out bare what they were doing and how terrible these deeds were that they did. So I think for younger generations that watch it, and it's very intriguing to see their response, is a complete shock. And is this true? Did this happen? How could this happen? Because it's literally it's almost like a figment of imagination, because one tends to forget about these things like orders to eliminate, shocking things that were laid bare at the TRC are coming back in the series. And if you weren't born prior to a certain year, and especially the new generation, millennials, this series is definitely opening up eyes.
So if you come and watch, what will you see? What should you expect?
Well, I mean, as I said, that through the child's eyes, you see their pain, their anguish, their quest for justice, how their normal lives have been altered from this singular shocking event that happened 30 to 40 years ago.
Enver Samuel, thank you very much indeed. The film producer, and of course that film festival is being run by KZN Film. That conversation brought to you by KZN Film. 20 minutes after 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Jerry on the line from Msunduzi, Peter Maritzburg. Hi, good morning. This Sunday World, you want to talk about the Mbeki story?
Yes, Jerry. How are you?
All right, go for it.
Yes. No, there are two things here. Sunday World lies. They said ANC back former President Mbeki. Whereas what you said, the SABC posted on their headline, it's not the same. It's similar, but not the same. It was some girl who asked the president yesterday, when he was campaigning in KZN, when is President Mbeki going to campaign? And if they call them by name, President Mbeki, former President Halma Motha, with President Nambonuga, and the President Balegambe. And then President responded, he said, no, they will come out, they will campaign for the ANC. And it was suggesting that he was begging them. But now, when you put those similar stories, a person who didn't hear some girl asking the president, and they read deciding where you might take those things that you're saying. They are not the same.
Okay.
Correct that.
All right, Jerry. All right, thank you. I think I understand it better now. Thank you for that. I should have seen that myself, actually. So, Jerry, thank you. But, yeah, interesting. Vusi and Midrand, hi, the ANC campaign.
Yeah, morning, Stephen, how are you?
Yeah, I'm well. Go for it.
Look, as much as the ANC is trying by all means, but I think the evidence is there for everyone to see. You can't bring the likes of Titi Mabuza, where people died in large numbers and there was no any prosecution. Look, people are still trapped in Lily Mine as we're speaking now. Let me not talk about the issue of water, because even my grandmother, when you see a person of the ANC campaigning, he will just swear at them, doesn't want to see them on that auto. So you can't want to come today and claim that by bringing those people who this level of corruption and rampant corruption with impunity, you come and claim that people are so naive. Can't see, they don't know what happened. Steve, let's stop to play. Let's stop these jokes and think South Africans are so stupid. Thank you.
All right, Vusi and Midrand, thank you. As always, we expect a strong view from you. 22 minutes after 8.
Agenda setting conversations of the day.
Well, there's been all sorts of conversations as people look through what the SAPS is trying to do to end gender-based violence. There have been all sorts of plans on this. There's now an annual performance plan for the SAPS over the next couple of years as well. The question, of course, is, does any of this make any difference? Lisa Vettens, a research associate at Wits University, a long-time academic looking at the situation around gender-based violence. Lisa, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to our listeners.
We've had various plans from the police over the years to deal with this. It's a very difficult crime to actually deal with because it often takes place in a private place. Have any of the plans worked? Is there any hope for the new plan?
Well, look, there's some things that the police can never stop doing, and that is train. So obviously any past, present and future plans must have a component of training, which the police do. But I think there is also a need for them to think innovatively, much more critically and reflexively on what they've done. And that's missing from the annual performance plan. Because the police do and have come up with some innovative ideas. For example, when the Domestic Violence Act was introduced, the Act didn't instruct them to set up specialized desks or offices responsible for domestic violence, but they did that. So I think the important thing that the police are not doing is to actually look at what's happening on the ground and what is its effect, what is failing. And this is especially important now with the new amendments to the Domestic Violence Act in effect. We need to know, are they working? What difference are they making? And I think the even bigger challenge we need to think about is, how do we move beyond purely policing responses to rape and domestic violence? How do we link them up to a much broader menu of options that would enable somebody to truly live and lead a life free of violence?
Excuse me. One of the things that the police can change is what happens when a woman... Excuse me, what happens when a woman goes to a police station to report a case? We've heard so many cases of women being turned away. Has that experience for women changed? Because that would then lead to more cases being reported.
The evidence on that is really mixed. I mean, you can hear examples of where the police have done a good job and somebody is satisfied, but then you can also continue to hear very poor examples of how they're treated. And I think what's just as concerning for women is when they do lay charges, that they never hear from the police ever again. They go and lay a complaint, and that's it. And when they ask for further information, they never get any information. So it continues to remain, I think, a very frustrating experience. One still hears that far too often, unfortunately, to believe that this has really changed in any meaningful, significant way.
To move the dial on this is a big thing to do. The police are crucial to that. Are there any sort of broad policy strokes that could be brought in relatively easy? And I suppose if they were, they would have been done by now. As I say, it's a difficult thing to do.
Well, look, I think there's things that they are supposed to do but don't do very well. The one thing that would make a real difference, especially when we start talking about homicides and other forms of less lethal injury, is of course the way the police manage their firearms register. Now, generally that has collapsed and pretty much well fallen apart, although there are these efforts to try and rebuild it. But that's an important place to focus. Another really important place to focus is the safety monitoring notices that have been introduced by the amendments to the Domestic Violence Act that require the police to follow up and check on somebody who's in a high-risk situation on a fairly regular basis. Is that working? What difference is it making? How do we create better community police responses so that, if you go to a police officer and let us say you are economically dependent and you end up withdrawing your case, are the police then linked to a social service who can continue to provide somebody with ongoing support and assistance? What is the Department of Human Settlements doing to ensure that there is alternative housing? So I think some of the important policy shifts are about better linking of what's going on in government in order to provide a holistic rather than a single response that doesn't address something as complex as domestic violence.
We've heard promise after promise, and it's been interesting to me to see that political parties talk about it, but it's not a main plank of their election manifestos either. So we see all of these promises, but is there actual evidence that those promises are being followed through?
No, and I think, as a researcher and looking at the research that's been done over the years, it is extremely concerning to me that over the last 10 to 15 years, research into policing in domestic violence and rape is actually declining. So that's a real problem because we don't actually know what's going on, which means that politicians can stand up and make all kinds of promises because no one's ever going to follow through and check up, and no one's ever going to track the policy to see if that was actually the right option that we should have followed or whether we should have taken and should now take a different path.
Lisa Vetten, thank you. Research Associate at Wits University and expert on gender-based violence, 27 after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Really bad day at the office for the Stormers.
Yeah, they're planning a comeback. They want to bounce back harder after that disappointing 27-21 loss to Ospreys, marking their first home defeat this season. The Stormers are facing an uphill battle for the URC playoffs. They've slipped to 6th on the log. Now, with the performance described by the director of rugby, John Dobson, as their worst, the team acknowledges overplaying as a key issue. The challenge doesn't ease up, though. They are preparing now to meet a determined Leinster team. Their team are eager to recover from their own loss, and that was against the Lions over the weekend. Cricket, the Dolphins, they've snuck into second place and earned a home semi-final after a comfortable 7-wicket victory in the final round of the Cricket South Africa T20 Challenge. All happened at Nelson Mandela Bay yesterday. A well-built 75-run partnership between Jason Smith and John Smuts saw the Dolphins reach the 131-run winning target with 16 balls to spare. In the meantime, the Gujarat Titans, they clinched a vital 3-wicket win over the Punjab Kings in their Indian Premier League match that took place at Mulanpur yesterday. And golf, Nelly Korda continuing the tradition of jumping into the pond after winning the Chevron Championship. Korda etched her name in the ladies' PGA Tour record books, winning her record-tying 5th straight tournament win with a 2-stroke victory, and that was for her second major title. The top-ranked Korda shot a 3 under 69 in the final to outlast Maja Stark of Sweden, who birdied her final 2 holes to shoot 69 and pull within a win. But here's Korda now.
It's just been a crazy couple of weeks with some really solid golf, and I can finally breathe. I was really nervous on that back 9. I really wanted this win, and it feels amazing to get it.
Now, Scotty Scheffler, he held a 5-shot lead to finish with 20 under par in a weather delay final round of the RBC Heritage Challenge. Scheffler will resume the final 3 holes later today. And finally, Olympic organisers have unveiled their plans to use artificial intelligence in sports, joining the global rush to capitalise on the rapidly advancing technology. Here's US skiing great Lindsey Vonn welcoming the plans to use artificial intelligence and saying it's a tool to enhance the sporting experience.
Enjoy about ski racing and just skiing in general is that you aren't on your phone, and I think that's what sports is all about in the end, is you're out there competing with the best in the world, and no amount of technology will take away that experience. No amount of technology will take away the feeling that you get when you're participating in sports. So I think it's just a tool to enhance performance, to enhance learning, and to also enhance the ability for spectators to enjoy sports as well.
We'll have more sport for you on SFM around 12:30. I'm Zaika.
Artificial intelligence. What impact is it having? What policy should government follow? That's next. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 8:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has described as impressive news that South Africa has reclaimed its spot as the biggest economy in Africa. Nigeria's economy was ranked as the continent's largest in 2022. More than 70% of South Africans have endured stress levels that make them feel incapable of coping with life's demands. This is according to the Ipsos World Mental Health Survey, which ranks South Africa among the highest globally in mental health disorders. And the Limpopo Health MEC, Dr. Poppy Ramatuba, is today expected to provide an update on the identification and repatriation of the remains of people killed in a bus crash in the province last month. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy if you're Pretoria bound this morning, both sides of the city. If you're driving up the N1, so northbound, having left Joburg on your way to Pretoria, crash involving a motorcyclist before Brakfontein. There's another one near the old Joburg Road, so you'll get to about Samrand Road, then come to a sort of shuddering halt, and then send very heavy traffic until we got past that final crash at Brakfontein interchange. Also inbound from the other side, driving in from the north, the lights that we've been talking about on Esky and Pathlele at WFN Kobo. Big junction, that one, and traffic very heavy from as far back as the Mopodi Highway. Still some queues coming along the N12 from Craft Road, passing 2 crash scenes before you get into Galilee's. 24 coming into that N12 is quite heavy from Edenvale side as well. Durban, 2 breakdowns taking forever to clear. One on the M4, the Southern Freeway at Jacobs, although traffic volumes are lightening, so the delay is easing, but the truck's still there. And then a breakdown, probably the first of many today, on the N2 South between Umgera Road and Spaghetti Junction, and that traffic heavy from Inanda Road Road. That N2 South stays heavy all day from about now right till about sort of peak hour this afternoon. So just make sure you're aware of that. We've seen that pattern just repeating on a weekly basis for the longest time. Cape Town, Gervin and Becky, very slow through Hanover Park towards Jan Smuts Drive through some roadworks, and Mike Pinar Boulevard, lights down at Chitty Mayor. So big delays coming from Yipti-Yaga or off the N1 highway as you turn onto Mike Pinar and then down in towards that junction. Rob Burton, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
27 minutes to 9, the time for your mediated conversation this morning. As you know, all around the world at the moment, there are big debates about the impact that artificial intelligence and the development of artificial intelligence will have on our society. Some people believe it will completely change the way we work and will lead to a situation where jobs done by people now will be done by computers in the future, which means millions of people around the world would lose their jobs. There are other fears. AI can be hugely powerful. It can help to solve problems, can also help bad actors. In other words, it can help people to, say, create propaganda. It can be used to cripple systems that we rely on, like banking systems or anything that requires security. And the big fear as well is that somehow we, as human beings and maybe as South Africans, will get left behind. To counter this, government has published its first draft of an AI policy, a policy to ensure that we benefit from artificial intelligence. So first this morning, the state of artificial intelligence. Where are we seeing its effects now? And what is it likely to change in the future? Arthur Goldstuck's a tech expert, a managing director at Worldwide Works. Then, the policy that has been published, what should government be doing? And is it actually doing that? Preeta Bakachi is a director and head of technology and innovation practice at Worksman's Attorneys. And finally, the ethical issues for all on this. Dr. Emile Ormond is an expert on artificial intelligence, ethics, risks, governance. We start then with Arthur Goldstuck. Arthur, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
I realize this is a big question. What is the state of artificial intelligence at the moment? What can it do?
At the moment, artificial intelligence is in the midst of an explosion of what they call generative AI, which means AI that can produce content. And that ranges from text to images to videos, audio, anything that comprises content can now be created by AI. So that means that anyone working in the content industry or in creative industries is, let's say, exposed to AI. That's the word that the World Economic Forum is now using. They're not saying it will destroy jobs, but rather jobs will be exposed to it. So it's a question of how people leverage generative AI in what they are already doing to make themselves better, rather than being replaced by generative AI. But what I also argue is that many people who didn't have access to professional content creation because it was too expensive or too complicated for them can now use generative AI to produce that content. So in a way, it brings a new generation of creative content workers into the field.
So it can produce content. I heard a quote somewhere where someone said, if you really want to see how important a soul is to art, look at an artwork created by AI, and you'll see why a human being still matters. I mean, that's true, isn't it?
I fully agree with that, because you can recognize AI-produced art most of the time. Almost exactly what you say. It tends to lack soul, but it also lacks a bit of humanity, which I suppose is the same thing. There's a sense of artificiality about it, but it is getting better. And we're only a year into the generative AI revolution, and we've seen dramatic changes. We've seen videos that look like they've been professionally produced by movie producers. And another year from now, you're probably going to find that the images, videos, etc., do have that soul. So people will be able to create videos that look, or images that look like humans produced them. Right now, content, you can often tell that it's produced by AI because it's too smooth, it's too consistent, and also too pedestrian in most cases. In other words, it's dull and boring compared to what humans can produce. But that is also improving all the time. But what that highlights is the need to identify work that's been created by AI, because sooner or later there will be AI tools available to anyone to flag the fact that a piece of content is AI created.
Okay. Is AI being used by humans against other humans? Is it being used to do bad things? I gave the example of propaganda. I would imagine in a social media era, it would be entirely possible using AI to just flood X, to flood Facebook with nonsense for whatever reason.
That is what propagandists are doing, what election manipulators are doing. People who have a dishonest agenda in politics are using AI to create fake content, to discredit their opponents especially. It's being used in war zones especially. We've seen a lot of fake video produced, for example, in Israel and Gaza to vilify Israel. They are creating content that people swallow wholesale because they assume that it must be true. So that's just one example. And it's an example that actually is dangerous because it leads to people becoming that much more militant. It leads to additional violence. On another level, we are seeing what you call bad actors. In other words, the hackers using AI to enhance their ability for phishing being where you persuade someone to click through to a link and expose their data or their bank accounts to the hackers. And AI is fantastic for the phishing industry. Phishing is spelled Phishing. But at the same time, the cybersecurity companies are using AI as a very powerful tool to counter these hackers. So the key there is that every individual or business must make sure that it has cybersecurity defenses in place, antivirus, anti-phishing, etc. Because you can be sure that in this arms race, the cybersecurity defenders are pulling out every trick they can from AI as well.
Is it inevitable that millions of people will lose their jobs as a result of the development of artificial intelligence?
It's inevitable in the same way that millions of people lost their jobs when horses were replaced by cars and when manual ledgers were replaced by spreadsheets and online accounting systems and those kind of technologies. So over time, you see old ways of doing things disappear and a new way of doing things emerging. And people forget that jobs were destroyed because jobs were created as well. And the prediction at the moment is that there'll be a net increase of jobs as a result of AI. But people doing jobs that can be replaced by AI better reskill themselves or upskill themselves and understand how they can use AI to enhance themselves. Sometimes they won't be able to keep their jobs, but with their skills and by adding AI to their skills, there's a good chance they'll find new jobs because there's actually a global shortage in areas like cybersecurity, cloud computing, and the like, and AI programming, of course.
Do you expect then, and I realize this is a hard prediction to make, in the next 10 years, will it change the way that we live?
Yes, I believe that the way we work in particular will be unrecognizable 10 years from now. The way we drive will be unrecognizable. The way food is produced, the way weather is forecast, it will all be transformed dramatically. Interestingly, in the government paper, which is a really rough draft of what government wants to do in AI, they suggest that agriculture will be one of the least affected industries because they mistake the idea that something that is manual will not be affected by AI. But that's patently not true because AI can enhance productivity of agriculture and the precision of agriculture dramatically, and it will be a sector that will be significantly influenced. But that might mean it will become more productive and we'll be able to hire more people.
And can artificial intelligence produce more artificial intelligence, and could we lose control of it?
It can certainly more artificial intelligence, but one of the things we've seen with what they call large language models, the likes of ChatGPT and Gemini Pro, is when they're trained on themselves, in other words, when they use themselves to try and enhance themselves, they start degrading in terms of the quality of what they output. So for the foreseeable future anyway, the AI that is guided by human beings is going to be far more effective than AI that's guided by AI.
Arthur Goldstuck, thank you very much indeed from Worldwide Works. Really appreciate the time, as you can hear, an expert on the subject. You're there, SAFM. Your mediated conversation continues around artificial intelligence, and one of the big aspects around artificial intelligence and the development of it has been the development of a national policy for government to follow on this subject. Preeta Pakaji is the Director and Head of Technology and Innovation Practice at Werksmans Attorneys. Preeta, good morning. Preeta, are you with us?
Good morning, Stephen. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good morning. From what I can see, most of the development of artificial intelligence has been done by the private sector. A lot of it has happened in the United States. If the private sector is driving this development, do we as South Africa need a government policy?
Stephen, I think we most certainly do, and the recent draft discussion paper is a step in the right direction, I believe. It is a rough draft document with a number of different concepts that it enunciates, and it is certainly a baby step in the right direction. I think that coupled with a national policy, effective governance frameworks and regulation should follow. And what is positive about the discussion paper is that it alludes to the government looking to propose regulatory frameworks and guiding principles going forward. So absolutely, it is a requirement, I think, and it's in line with developments in other jurisdictions. Yes, there's been a lot of development in the U.S., particularly sector-specific legislative developments. It's more of a market-driven model. The EU, by contrast, has a more regulatory focus with the EU AI legislation, the EU AI Act that is soon to be passed into law. It follows a risk-based legal approach. On the continent, and then coming back to South Africa, there have been a number of initiatives offering direction, and it's a balance between working out the right regulatory levers and the so-called soft law approach versus hard law approach. And so a policy within South Africa, in the South African context, would take us a long way towards getting to effective legislation. Of course, formal legislation takes a long time to go through the legislative process, and so appropriate interim steps such as sector-based initiatives, as well as you mentioned, the private sector involvement is crucial given the proliferation of the use of AI in South Africa already, both for good as well as where it touches on potential cyber risk issues, as well as infringing on human rights such as privacy, etc. So a balanced approach is suggested.
Can you actually regulate or direct the development of artificial intelligence anyway? I mean, if it is illegal, for example, for a human being to publish your private information, it would be illegal for artificial intelligence to do that. What I'm trying to get to is, I mean, this is all moving quite quickly. Is it really possible to actually regulate it or direct it anyway if you're a government?
Yes, so that is the million-dollar question: is how effective can regulation be, and it would be capable of some regulation, and most of the legislative and governance frameworks provide for or are trying to provide for accountability, as well as the ability to have recourse against someone or and ultimately a human behind the machine, and correct that eventually intelligence creating further intelligence may be harder to manage. And so the legislative frameworks are effectively guided by the concept of ethical and responsible AI. And so the appropriate governance and legislative frameworks timeously implemented can help put the right guardrails in place in order to prevent the proliferation of AI where it becomes out of control and difficult and almost technically impossible to enforce as a government against those bad actors.
The other big fear is that I think many people are going to be left behind. So South Africans will not have the opportunity to be a part of this. And that would certainly require policy changes with regard to education and maybe, just as we see our government, our Department of Economic Development and Competition, Trade and Industry and Competition, for example, providing tax incentives for manufacturers that will make electric cars. It's providing a big tax incentive. We would probably need to do something like that for artificial intelligence too.
Yes, so I think that's what the discussion document alludes to. It's a combination of providing for AI literacy skills as well as research and development. So funding of local AI startups and creating opportunities in that way.
Is it possible that we've fallen behind already and that, in fact, young people at school now already haven't been properly prepared for this kind of world? I mean, this is maybe one of the great features of our society at the moment, is that we actually might be falling further behind technological advances, the way that other countries are using information technology, and AI is a part of that.
I think that might be true, although positively, the step in the right direction, and hopefully what comes from it is actual concrete steps and actions that are taken through the public sector and the private sector to hasten the divide and to create those opportunities. I think that we can learn quite quickly from the lessons learned in other jurisdictions where regulations and various initiatives, regulatory sandboxes and the like have been already tested and stress tested, and it is hoped that with the right direction, a government policy can drive that digital AI literacy as well as research and development in education, as well as the other sectors that could greatly advance the economy quite quickly. So one hopes that the government, following this discussion document, acts quite quickly in building an effective AI policy and then actioning it quite quickly.
Preeta Bagachi, thank you, Director and Head of the Technology and Innovation Practice at Werksman's Attorneys.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Two very heavy queues into Pretoria this morning. One on Eski and Pathlele, no lines at WFN Como. It's a heavy backlog through to Vanderhof, and the Dustboard Tunnel Run going south, very heavy as well. Bremer through the tunnel on towards Vomhagen. A couple of earlier crashes on the M1 North, one at Old Joburg and one after at Brockfontein interchange. Traffic was badly backed up, but it does seem to be moving on that section. Where it's not moving is into a crash at Allendale, the N1 going north, starting to backlog through the Beclue interchange. Still a crash on the N12 and R24 routes after they've merged. Coming into Galilee, so some delays there. Durban's Richmond Road coming from Clarvata, Shallcross coming from Chatsworth, if you like. It's a really big backlog, has been all morning, up into Marion Hill. There's a problem in that central Marion Hill area around Milky Way Junction, and that Richmond Road on the way to Pinetown is a really significant backlog. I think a lot of people are avoiding that and jamming Hunts Detman up instead. That's a very heavy Pinetown bound as well. Still with the breakdown on the N2 South between Get Her Own Spaghetti Junction. Some queues coming down from in under roadside. The M4 Southern Freeway, Jacobs, around that stationary truck. That's all cleared up. Looks like the truck has been moved. There's no sign of any disruption there. Cape Town, this one will catch you out. Mike Pinar, if you turn off the N1 highway onto Mike Pinar, you come down the Iptiaga across the highway onto Mike Pinar. There's no traffic lights at Tinny Mayers. That's a really big queue going southbound. And the highway's busy but easing. Elevated freeway choking up, though, over the elevated freeways. You approach the CBD area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
I'm Sindisiwe Chikunga, the Minister of Transport in South Africa. Our nation is not where it was 30 years ago. From a modest 7,200 kilometers of national roads in 1998, we have expanded to an impressive 24,160 kilometers today. The N2 Wild Coast, a testament to massive road infrastructure investment, creating thousands of jobs, reducing travel times, and connecting communities. We are collaborating with other spheres of government to enhance safety and quality of our roads. We have manufactured over 240 new trains right here in Mzansi using local skills and materials. Welcome Stimela Sabantu, offering an affordable transport alternatives.
Business owners, don't waste your time searching for an employee that has it all. They do not exist. But I will tell you what does exist. The Kia K2700 Workhorse. It's versatile, powerful, and reliable. It also arrives on time every day. Save your cash with no deposit and only pay 5,799 Rand per month. It's the business partner you've been waiting for. Up your game with the Kia K2700 Workhorse. Visit kia.co.za for more. T's and C's apply.
Kia. Movement that inspires.
Get your payments done with the utmost security and convenience when you purchase a TV license now. With our new secure payment systems with a one-time PIN, OTP feature, and the choice of receiving your OTP via SMS or email, you can ensure prompt and secure payments. The additional use of capture will protect you against spam and automated data attractions. With TV licenses, you can enjoy watching all your favorite shows or movies that matter to you. Get yours today. Visit www.tvlic.co.za.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
6 minutes to 9. Good morning. Continuing your mediated conversation around the development of artificial intelligence. Dr. Emil Ormon has a PhD in Artificial Intelligence Ethics Risk Governance. Joins us now. Dr. Ormon, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
Whenever there's a new technology, there's a huge fear of ethical issues. Is AI any different? Are there new issues that come to the fore because of what artificial intelligence is or could one day be?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in certain respects it does present new challenges, and others it does not. I think it's just good to keep in mind that AI is often described as a general purpose technology, which basically means that it fuels other technologies. So good examples of this would be something like electricity and the internet. So like these technologies, their reach is quite profound. And all of these aforementioned have regulation to varying degrees of them, and AI in that sense is no different and should also have some form of regulation, or at least we should be having a discussion about regulation and ethics.
The thing is with this is that we're not talking about a massive program that requires thousands of people working on something to try and make it happen, like, say, a nuclear weapons program. We're talking about something which is, a big group of people that could be working anywhere in the world developing it. So you and I can sit here and talk about this is what should happen and must happen. Is one of the first ethical questions whether you can actually impose will on artificial intelligence or impose will on the people developing it. In other words, what I'm trying to get to is we can say we want X, Y, and Z to happen, but there's no way to make sure that does happen.
No, absolutely. And this, I think, speaks to one of the cardinal issues that we have. Unlike regulating the electricity sector, for example, where government and industry, South African industry has a direct impact on that. Take something like ChatGPT as an example, which is developed in Silicon Valley in the United States and California. It's purely subject to the ethical considerations and laws of that country. Obviously, we have some ability to regulate it locally, although that's only at very initial stages. But most of these things get exported to us. TikTok, which I rely heavily on an AI algorithm, is no different, and that's Chinese. So, there's also a geopolitical element to this, which is what makes any kind of ethical consideration and legal consideration very, very difficult.
It would be nice to think there's certain things that you could bake into artificial intelligence. In other words, that you could make sure that ethics, no matter where it was, maybe in the programs that are used to create artificial intelligence, that could be done. Could that be done? Is there any way to try and do that? If we do want to do that, we'd have to do that right now. We'd probably have had to do it yesterday, but we'd have to do it right now.
So let me just caveat that my answer with that's quite a technical question, which I think could be better left to a software engineer. But I'll say this much: let's theoretically, hypothetically, we can bake in some ethical code into AI, and I think we need to also keep in mind that ethics is not static, right? What was ethical 15 years ago, 30 years ago, even in this country, is a very good example, is very different from what it is now. So that's the first point. Secondly, I think we sometimes take for granted that ethics is also highly contextual. That's where the ethics in AI is often discussed in terms of self-driving or autonomous vehicles. With the infamous trolley problem of, do you drive over, one person or three people, do you divert it, that kind of thing. So it's ethics is not stationary. I'm not sure baking it in really would resolve any of the pertinent ethical issues that we have today that are faced by humans. When you and I drive to work, whether it's on a bicycle or a car or a truck, we need to make decisions, and those are highly contextually dependent and influenced by our personal value systems, by the law, by how we feel that given day. So it's not, we can't just simply, ethics is not something that can be simply coded, hardwired into a piece of software. It's a little bit more problematic than that. That's why ethics is such a fruitful and problematic area of discussion, frankly.
I presume that what's going to happen is that we're going to have to try and impose ethical things on the people who control the artificial intelligence. And even then it can be difficult to know if we can hold them really accountable, because it might be difficult to know who they actually are.
Yes. So I think this goes back to the point I mentioned at the beginning, that South Africa is largely a recipient at this stage of AI technology. Yes, we have a burgeoning or a nascent industry, but we're largely recipients of AI algorithms and the data that feeds into it. So we're largely dependent on others that are based at other locations, often unknown to us. I think a lot of these, applications that you find in the App Store, and do we even know where they really originate from? So how do we keep people accountable? And that's a general problem in AI and technology more broadly. There's no to copy something can be copied a million times without the original being changed. So how do we move back to the beginning, so to speak, to hold somebody accountable, particularly if there isn't a global regulatory ethical standard, which we're very, very far from, because as I mentioned, there is a geopolitical element to this, where each country, will proclaim that they want ethical and regulated use of AI, yet it's very much in their national interest to be leading the charge and having, the most capable technology. So it's a real problem of the commons.
Dr. Emil Ormond, thanks very much indeed. Has a PhD in AI Ethics Risk Governance. My thanks also to Preeta Bagaji, the Director and Head of Technology and Innovation Practice at Worksman's Attorneys. And starting us off today, the expert Arthur Goldstuck. Really appreciate it. It's a very interesting conversation. From Melissa, from Stanza, from Mdu, from Zelma, myself, look after yourself. We'll see you tomorrow. Kathy is next. You're with SFM, leading the conversation just after 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, remarks by Ramaphosa on South Africa regaining biggest economy title, and a briefing on Limpopo bus crash victims' repatriation. Good morning. We start with election news. The ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has described as impressive news that South Africa has reclaimed its spot as the biggest economy in Africa. Nigeria's economy was ranked as the continent's largest in 2022. Egypt, which held the top position in 2023, is projected to fall to second behind South Africa after a series of currency devaluations. Ramaphosa was speaking to the media on the sidelines of an ANC campaign trail in Kwanolozi outside Durban.
Today, we've now become the largest economy on the African continent. Nigeria and Egypt having been up there, they are having their own challenges, and South Africa is now the largest economy on the continent, and that position in itself attracts more investors because they see that this is a country that is reforming various processes, and it's a country that is going somewhere. We have a clear destination of where we're going as a country, and that's why we are attracting investors.
More than 70% of South Africans have